Welcome. We are here tonight to do a Public Safety Committee meeting, and I am the Vice Chair of this committee. The Chairman, Councilor Victor Chow, couldn't be here, so I will be handling the meeting tonight. And our first item on the agenda is speeding on Lincoln Street. If Jerry Bryant would like to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman Adams. This is a request from a Bob Barrett, who resides at 30 Lincoln Street. I think he had reached out to multiple counselors and maybe even some staff people about concerns he has with the posted speed limit on Lincoln Street. Just for reference, I've included a map that shows you the length of Lincoln Street and the context of where that is regarding the city. What I would suggest is that since there is a very structured method through MDOT whereby we go about getting speed limits changed, I just as soon have Eric Dudley, the city engineer, provide an overview. I know the council has probably heard it multiple times, but just for Bob's education and also for the general public as to what we need to do to go through an attempt to change speed limits. Eric?
Yes, thanks. So this is the start of the process to look at consideration for speed limit change on a roadway. Basically, this committee would need to act to request that the administration reach out to DOT to make the review. So I would do that on behalf of the administration with Region 1 over in Scarborough. They would then come out, do a volume and speed study on the roadway using counters. They would drive the roadway, they would take measurements, look at the density of development, the type of development on the roadway, the width of the roadway, any horizontal or vertical curvature in the roadway, any sort of issues with sight lines, that sort of thing. They would put all of that information together to make a determination on whether or not the speed limit should stay the same, go up, or go down. One of the key components of that is measuring the current speeds and volume on the roadway. The engineering design speed is called the 85th percentile speed. So that means that 85% of the drivers on a roadway go at or below a specific speed. That's the 85th percentile speed. And engineering guidance tells us that when setting a speed limit, the speed limit should be at or slightly below the 85th percentile speed. So let's say it's the 85th percentile speed on a roadway is 42. For instance, one of the considerations would be, well, probably 40 miles per hour would be the speed limit on any given roadway with those conditions, as long as the crash records show that there aren't any issues with safety. Like I said, sight lines are adequate, roadway width is adequate, those sorts of things. So they'll take all that information and put together a report, and then they actually send that to the chief of the state police. The chief of the state police reviews that information and takes that recommendation from the traffic engineers at Region 1, signs that declaration if it's an increase or a decrease in the speed limit. They then send that information to us, and we go out and make the new posting, whatever that be. But that's when it becomes law. So that's the process. It takes a few months in order to do that, especially right now, because you can't put the type of road counters out that you need to do in cold weather. It needs to be in warmer weather so that they can drive the spikes into the pavement to hold the tubes. So that's the process. Like I said, it takes a few months. And once they've made that determination on what that speed limit is, we can't appeal it. It's set.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the committee, or did you want to hear from the resident first that asked for the referral? Okay. Mr. Barrett, did you want to get up and speak? If you could just state your name and your address, please. You can always move that forward if you want. There we go.
Is that okay with the TV?
Yeah. They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. Okay. My name is Bob Barrett. I've been living at 30 Lincoln Street for 7 years with my wife and I. That's the old Haskell Mill. Was 42 condos. And we walk this Lincoln Street quite a bit. It's a street that doesn't have sidewalks. The reason I brought it up is mainly because I feel that I don't know when this speed limit was determined, years or decades ago, but the street's different now than it was, I think, when that speed was determined. Like I say, there's 42 units of residential on one end of Lincoln Street. There's two side streets, Bremen and Osaka, that have about 28 residences, I'd say, in the last 20 years. I don't know for sure. And then there's another 11 units of condos at the far end of Lincoln Street before it becomes Mayberry Street. So about 80 units have come online, I think, in the last 20 years or so. And there's a lot of pedestrian traffic on this road. The other thing, the road is also is surrounded by roads that have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. So Bridge Street, Pierce Street, all have 25-mile-an-hour speed limits, and this road doesn't. Just a couple other things. There's a 90-degree turn right at the former golf course, and there's a sign that says, that has a visual of a 90-degree turn, and then right after that there's a 30-mile-an-hour posting. And there's no way you can make this turn at 30 miles an hour, and nobody would who's familiar with the road. But if you're not, it just seems like an odd posting to have. The other thing is that most of the road is fairly straight, and I think motorists tend to go faster on a straight road, but it's a little deceiving. The sight line is actually slightly crooked, so when you're walking about halfway on the road, you're not really seen for oncoming traffic. I just think it would be safer. There's a lot of runners. In my condo development, there's 42 residents and there's 22 dog owners. So there's a lot of dog traffic on the road just from my use. I guess if you're familiar with the road, just the other thing I would mention is when you're coming off Bridge Street, there's sort of a curve right in front of the old Haskell Mill, and Kennard Street kind of comes in, and I think when traffic is going 30 miles an hour, again, that's just an area where it's I don't feel it's very safe. Thanks for your introduction. I didn't know it was that technical with road counts and such. All I'm giving you is anecdotal evidence that I see this evening. I think it would just be safer if people were going slower. My last comment is that I think I just noticed it in the morning. People from Cumberland use this street as a cut through to avoid traffic on Main Street. They don't go down the parallel street Pierce because that has speed bumps and is posted at 25 miles an hour, and they cut down Mayberry and can go a little fast on Lincoln Street. So, any questions?
Are there any questions? Sure. Councilor Fuller?
No questions, Madam Chair. I'll just make a motion to send the speed limit to the state for review, as outlined by Mr. Dudley.
Is there a second? Councilor Riley? Is there any questions? Councilor Riley?
Sure, just to follow up on, I've walked this street many times, and so I understand what you're describing here. And again, appreciate you bringing it forward. The one thing, just to kind of bring the point home again, is the one danger in moving forward with the process is sometimes the state comes back with a speed limit that we don't like.
Faster.
One that's higher.
Right.
And so that is, as they said, we don't have an appeal right on that. So that is a danger to just be aware of.
Yeah, I'd like to take the risk, but yeah, your point's well taken.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else? I'm just curious, Eric, so do they take into account pedestrian traffic at all, or is it totally just vehicle count?
Well, they do it during their field observations of the roadway.
Okay.
Because they spend some time on the roadway, going back and forth and reviewing things. I would say in my experience with Lincoln Street, they wouldn't consider it a high pedestrian activity on Lincoln Street. But what I'll tell you is there's a severe lack of shoulder, and there's no sidewalk, as Mr. Barrett said. And so the pedestrians, when they are walking on Lincoln Street, they need to walk on the paved surface. You know, there's not much for striping, that sort of thing. So, you know, they would definitely take that into consideration in looking at, you know, again, the density, you know, the development around the area. And really, when they look at density, they don't necessarily look at all of Osaka Street and Bremen Street, but they do look at the development on the street itself, which has grown. There's actually another duplex that was built in between the condos down at the corner and Bremen Street as well. So all that development's been done, you know, within probably the last 10 to 15 years. So there has been a change, you know, and the golf course, you know, was active. Now it, you know, it has a much lower use there. So, you know, that would play a factor in the other direction. But, you know, I don't see it, you know, if the speed limit were to change. You know, sometimes I warn about it going up, right? Because it happens. We know it happens. I don't necessarily see it going up. Maybe there will be a stretch of Lincoln Street that they might, but I doubt it. I would say at the sharp corner at Mayberry, you know, that could be where you might see a reduction. 30 miles an hour might be where it stays for the majority of it. It might go to 25. It's hard to say, but I don't think there's a huge risk in this particular case of it going up. But without the data, I couldn't say for sure.
And is there a limit on how often you can request a certain road to be reviewed for a speed limit?
Well, we certainly couldn't do it next year if we,
Right.
yeah.
And the only reason I'm asking is
Yeah.
because of the golf course, and if it
Yep.
was sold and developed.
Yep. Oh, I think, you know, yeah, so if there's a major change in development, certain, you know, additional density, you know, you could, if they didn't change it, let's say, if it
Okay.
stayed the way it was, and then, yeah, let's say the golf course developed into, you know, high-density residential for some reason, you know, and it's all along Lincoln Street, right up tight against it, you know, they'd probably take a look at it again if they hadn't changed it. If they changed it down to 25, you're not going to get it below that.
Sure.
Could I just ask, is there an opportunity as a resident or as a pedestrian, not as a motorist, to write a letter to, I don't know, the body that makes this decision? Or is it all done on data?
So I think the best approach would be to, you could send me an email, and I would pass that along to Region 1. Yeah.
Great.
And probably multiple from residents wouldn't hurt? Multiple residents on Lincoln Street?
Yeah, no, and you know, one effective statement from one resident, I think is
Okay.
great. I think the points you bring up are valid points, and I think, you know, that does have an effect. It's good for them to consider that when they're looking at the situation, so.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything further? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to forward it to them, to the city, to the state, to forward it to the state. Okay, all those in favor? It's 4 in favor, none opposed, and so that passes. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
And the next item up is traffic on Forest Street. Mr. Bryant, did you want to introduce this item as well?
Well, this item has a long history. It's at least as long as my time here, and since Brendan's really the only one in an elected capacity, obviously the mayor was probably pinching people on Lincoln Street before I came, but it's long been discussed because it is a major travel corridor, and it connects not only Stroudwater Street and destinations such as the high school and the middle school, but also connects to the arterial. And this has been, in the 17 years I've been here, an ongoing struggle as far as balancing the fact that it is a fairly densely developed but primarily single or two-family neighborhood. And you do experience at times high volumes of traffic. We have done a lot of study and analysis, including speed studies, which I think at least one was included in your packet. But I think the concerns have not gone away, and there haven't been a lot of significant changes that have happened on the street. So you all received input from a number of residents. I reached out to the 4 people that I had names and email addresses to let them know about tonight, and I asked them if there were others that they thought would be interested, please let them know, and I think that they've done that. I don't know if the chief has anything, either chief or Era have anything to say before we listen to what the folks that had raised this issue have to say.
I don't have anything to add right now.
Can I ask what the speed limit is on Forest Street, Eric?
Yeah, so the the legal speed limit on Forest Street is unposted 25 miles per hour.
What do you mean unposted?
So state law says that there's 2 general speed limits in Maine. Inside the urban compact, it's 25 miles per hour. Outside of the urban compact, it's 45 miles per hour, unless otherwise posted. The only way you can legally post a speed limit is with the signature of the chief of the state police. That has never been done on Forest Street. So currently, it is posted at 25 miles per hour illegally.
So there are signs, but they shouldn't be there.
A sign.
There's a sign,
Uh,
one sign, okay.
Yeah, there's one.
And we don't even have the signature to have that there, is what you're saying.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Is there a reason why there's never been a signature gathered for that? Just curious.
Yeah, so a few years ago when this first came up, since I've been around, people were concerned about the speed and that sort of thing. And so we did have a study done by, actually, I kind of did it, I got a favor from Region 1 to do this, and they looked at it, and they came back and they said, because they actually had come to me and said, you shouldn't have that posted. Anyway, they said, we've done our review, and it should be posted at 30. And so we effectively got that buried as a favor, but that was the guidance at the time. That was quite a while ago now.
Okay. Boy, I'm almost sorry I asked.
Thought that was a simple question, didn't you?
I know. President Reardon?
Yes, thank you. Not only is this a speed limit issue, I believe, we extended Forest Street. It used to be Woodlawn, now it's Forest. And when this first came up with the residents, on a Saturday morning, I was on Rochester Street, just observing. I was there for 15 minutes, and 5 cars came to the stop sign, 3 ran the stop sign, 1 coasted through, and 1 stopped. So there is a significant neglect of that stop sign at that intersection. Back when I remember when Rochester went up by the cemetery, and that was a stop, and people were afraid they were going to get clipped. Here, I think the perception is that that road continues, and if they kind of look both ways and go through, so not only is it speed, so if they don't slow down for that, obviously they're going a little bit faster around that corner. But I just found it very interesting that getting the emails and saying, okay, I'm going to go up myself, and this isn't a day that school's in session, Sonda Brothers doesn't have trucks anymore, and I think that a lot of those residents in the old Saunders Mill comes from Main Street area. So it was shocking to me to see how many 5 or 6 cars, and at that point neglected the stop sign. So heaven forbid if there was a child or another person, or because it's a weird turn, because if you look at the striping, you almost have to go beyond to turn, and it's not really a 90 degree. I don't know what degree it is, but it is a funky turn there anyways. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Anybody else have comments right before I open to public? Anybody from the public like to get up and speak? Just state your name and address, please.
Rebecca Dillon, 222 Forest Street, and I've lived there for about 20 years and seen a significant increase in traffic and the speed in the traffic over those 22 years. And knowing it's a street that's owned by the state, I went on their website and looked up the traffic count, and they didn't have anything posted for 2017. But in 2016, the average annual average daily traffic on Forest Street, and it was taken at both ends. On the Main Street end, it was 3,150 cars, and on the Rochester end, it was 3,520 cars. And then just as another point of comparison, it's pretty close to the traffic count in the intersection of Brook Street and Bridgeton Road. So that will tell you how much traffic goes through Forest Street. They're at 3,600, so they're a little bit more. And if you compare the two areas in your mind, they're very different. One is very dense, and as Jerry mentioned, single-family homes, a lot of pedestrian traffic. And then if you look at the intersection of Brook and Bridgeton, that is much more of a highway environment. So put those two comparisons in your mind, and that's what people on Forest Street deal with daily. And that's as far as the volume's concerned. I'm not sure there's a lot we can do about that. I understand that the city's growing and traffic's going to grow, but the speed's a problem. I know a neighbor whose house has been hit twice by cars going too fast through that intersection that Gary mentioned. My neighbor just last week was almost hit twice by the same person going too fast. So it's just, I've seen a lot of, I'm not going to go through all the crazy stuff I've seen. But I also did some other research and looked up, what's acceptable or not acceptable, but what's considered appropriate for that type of a neighborhood. And just as an example, if we're getting 3,520 cars on average per day, that's 2.4 cars a minute. And that is considered very poor when it comes down to a residential area. So there is an huge issue with volume. Again, I'm not sure if that can even be addressed. And I know the meeting we had a couple of years ago where the engineer from NDOT was here, and he talked about some options for traffic calming to at least get the speed down. I don't know if anything ever moved forward with that. It obviously didn't, but I don't know if he went back to whoever he needed to meet with and discuss. Speed bumps were one item that he brought up, and just doing some research on those, speed bumps will reduce volume in traffic by 18 to 22%. And speed reduction in 22 to 23%. So that's pretty significant. The other thing that he mentioned, which I thought was a great idea, was bringing in the white lines closer, because the wider the road, the faster people are going to go. And I think the whole thing, and I know this isn't an issue that anyone can do anything about here in this room, but I guess my question for Eric is, if MDOT does a traffic study to try to determine the appropriate speed limit, and they're getting speeds of people who are going too fast, does that mean they can increase the speed limit just because people decide they can drive whatever speed they want to? I mean, that's the way I took that description,
That's the way I took it, too.
which
Eric?
is, I know that's not your issue or your...
If you want me to address that, it doesn't mean that just because people drive too fast, I'm gonna put that in quotes because that's, you know, who determines that? But they look at a variety of things. Safety, okay, so if you have enough roadway width, you have adequate, you know, sidewalks, that sort of thing, if houses are set way off the street, and you're looking at the crash data, for instance, and it shows that really there isn't a history of preventable accidents, you know, especially the types that reoccur consistently, then if that's the information that they're seeing from the data, then yeah, you might increase the traffic, the speed limit. But if you're seeing that there is, you know, a lot of, you know, higher than normal amount of crashes, things of that nature, then they won't necessarily do that, but you take different measures. I did want to mention that speed tables at the time when the DOT representative was here were not on the table because it was a major, so 4th Street's a major collector. It's a state aid roadway. So it's a highway in a sense. Federal funds go into that. The last time it was paved majority of it was with federal funds. But we did implement painting the stripes out further and effectively narrowing the lanes, and then they've stayed that way. We did do that. It's not much, but we did do it. So I can tell you that I reviewed the crash data on 4th Street from 2013 through 2018. There's a handful of accidents. They were all somewhat different from one another. There was one that was an OUI. There was one where there was a truck like 90 degrees to the roadway, hanging out into the roadway, and someone tried to drive around it and hit the front bumper of that delivery truck, things like that. So one of the things that is terminology is called a high crash location. So a high crash location is either a stretch of road or an intersection that has a higher amount of crashes than the average stretch of road or intersection that is like that stretch of road or intersection. So the city of Westbrook has 24 high crash locations currently. None of those are on Forest Street or at any intersection with Forest Street currently, but we do have 24 in the city. Like I said, there's a handful of accidents, you know, and I could certainly, you know, discuss some of them with you if you'd like. And
Okay. Did you have some more questions, Rebecca? Or?
No, I think that was it. It's interesting, Eric, you mentioned the striping, bringing the white lines in, that they have been brought in. They're still not in far enough where a car can park, and they're still straddling the white line, so I don't think that is sending as strong of a message as if the line was in further. I do think that there's some things that can be done to help with the speed on Forest. It's just going to get worse with Rock Row going in. And it's with the density of that neighborhood, the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit is appropriate, but the speeding that occurs and the disregard to stop signs is not appropriate. And I don't necessarily feel like it's the police department's job to police one street because people can't be cognizant of how they drive. So if it's not a speed bump that MDOT will allow, it would be good to maybe have some discussions with them on other options if the city is willing to do that.
Yes.
Thanks, Linda. Just to follow up, because I have been with many people here in the room, been through this for a long time. And Eric, I remember when this did, well, this came up several times, but when we did talk with DOT last time, so we talked about it being a state aid road, and which limited significantly what could be done on the road. We had talked about the speed limit, and they let us kind of put that in our pocket and not raise the speed limit. So what So we couldn't put speed tables down. I recall the discussion about moving the lines. Maybe we can look at moving them more. But I don't recall there being other options from the state. What other options might there be to address this issue? Because it obviously it is an issue, and we've been talking about it for a long time. Are there any options that we can do for us to try to address this?
Well, I think one of the things that we would want to do is first determine what the speeds are on Forest Street. You know, we did actually the police department did a non-engineering speed study recently. I think it was in November. What we collected for data there was that the average speed on Forest Street during the time of collection was 29 miles per hour. The 85th percentile speed was 34 miles per hour. The fastest speed was 53.
Oof.
So, so if we were to suspend the rest of the discussion for a minute and say, okay, DOT's told us it should be posted at 30 miles per hour. If you have an 85th percentile speed, truly, when you actually do an engineering study on it, if it's supposed to be posted at 30, and your 85th percentile speed is at 34, I would say we have a pretty reasonably functioning roadway. I'm not talking about the intersection of Forest Street and Rochester when I'm saying that. I'm saying just from a speed perspective from Rochester out to Main Street and back. You know, again, this is data that we collected. It's not an engineering study, so it's not fair to say that's the data. We could do a study on that, a true engineering study, and determine what that is in fact. You know, knowing that we're kind of under pressure on the speed limit wanting to be posted 30, or we're trying to avoid that. You know, if the engineering data came back that similar to what we collected in November, I think it's a reasonably functioning roadway from a speed perspective.
And so, so what I was trying to get to understand though is in terms of if the data came back differently and showed that documented a concern on the road.
Right.
What would be the options that we could do with the road where we are limited with it being state aid?
So one of the things that we've been working on with DOT and PACS is actually dropping a classification lower on Forest Street from a major collector down to a minor collector. Looks like that's going to go forward. I think that opens up more possibilities for us when it comes to traffic calming.
Okay.
And we could have that conversation with DOT on, you know, what pieces we could implement compared to what we could as a major collector.
And so I don't really need, that sounds encouraging, but I don't really know what that means. So if it was a minor collector, what are the types are there a list of things that could be done on a minor collector road that can't be done on?
Yeah, we don't have that guidance yet
Okay.
on if there's other tools we could use. What I can tell you is that a minor collector is the lowest state aid roadway classification. So below that, it's no longer a state aid roadway, it's a townway.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the lowest classification, which means let's call it the least valuable in the eyes of Federal Highway Administration and Maine DOT. It also means we're going to get probably less funding in the future for it, but it's something that DOT feels is right. In looking at the data, we believe it's right, and it's what we're working on with them.
Just one more question, because I know we're getting. So, is there a timetable on the PACS decision?
Catherine, next 3 months maybe, something like that, 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, they still have to go to all the other regions and work out. Minor collector was something that was instituted by Federal Highway in 2011.
and they're now going through and classifying each of the regions. So they've only done this one region, so it might be a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just curious why you're asking for it to be changed from major to minor?
We're not asking it, we're not fighting it, is what we're doing. We're not fighting it.
Okay, it just means that we have more options
So,
for traffic calming?
yeah, I think it will open some options up. We don't know what yet, but that's one of the advantages of lowering the classification. It's something that DOT is reviewing with the new Federal Highway Administration guidance throughout the state of Maine. It used to be that if it's a collector roadway inside the urban compact, it's automatically a major collector. Now Federal Highway is saying, well, you can split that into major and minor collector as well. Just like we have major and minor arterials, and then we have principal arterials as well, which is the highest classification.
Public comment?
Colleen Hilton, 64 Berkeley Street. I drive Forest Street every day, and my parents live there. I grew up there from the time I was 5, I believe. Traffic and speed has always been a problem on Forest Street, probably always will be. Sitting in your seats as well, I know there are traffic and speed considerations all over the city. But I do think there are a couple of things that could be done on Forest Street. And Eric, this is a question for you. With the current highway designation, does that prohibit the city from putting in additional stop signs at different points along Forest Street?
The only way that stop signs can be installed is through an engineering study, and there's no mid-block intersection between Rochester Street and Main Street that I can think of that would come close to warranting a stop sign. So to put it in would put the taxpayers at liable risk.
But perhaps that could be looked at with the traffic that comes out of the Woodfords and Saunders Way, because we've talked a lot about the Rochester side of Forest, but the speed that happens when the businesses exit that complex and more businesses are going in there. So that's one thought. My other question was around engineering at the Forest Street, Rochester point, where that little monument sits, which is probably somebody's private property. But President Reardon made reference to that's a really funny angle. On the one hand, the additional 2 families on the streets have put more parking on Forest Street, which actually has, I think, helped to slow down traffic, much as sometimes it's a little dicey to maneuver through, especially when there are high speeds happening. So I think if we could look at that corner, and particularly the homes on that end of Forest Street have been hit, I think, twice, maybe 3 times, actually hit the houses. So I would think perhaps if we could pick up a little more space where that little monument currently sits, it might just help with that angle and make that stop sign a bit more, not that it's not visible, but it might help. Some suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we okay to continue the council meeting, or
Well,
guide
there's a
me?
scheduled posted meeting for 7 o'clock, so you need to keep that in mind. But we've
Okay.
actually got one more item on this agenda as well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
should be cognizant of that. My suggestion here is that we do some more inventorying, to maybe get some more specific answers of what currently can be done here, what, probe if we can perhaps, what the reclassification of the street might help with. I think Eric already is, I saw him jotting down, looking at the sidelines, if you will. I think they're called fog lines, actually, aren't they? I mean, the interesting thing is, the on-street parking does help reduce speed, and I'm not going to say it reduces volume, but it certainly helps reduce speed because it physically narrows the road. And so I think maybe if we look at some more realistic, tangible things that could be done under current conditions or under change conditions, that might, number one, give the neighborhood a better feel for it, because quite often, traffic calming is a great idea until you see what it is specifically, and you don't want it in your neighborhood. And we've experienced that in other areas where we've come up with the solution. They said, absolutely not. So I think the more realistic we make that, the more likely we can move forward with something. I certainly think the intersection at the far end, the best thing, well, one of the better options for that is to tighten it up. It's wide open, and that's the reason cars go fast is when something's wide open. Tightening that would slow the traffic down. I think it would create more adherence to the stop sign. But realigning the curb and tightening that intersection would be a very expensive project. So there's the playoff with that. Would be great for pedestrians. You could create nice walking areas. There already are sidewalks, I realize, but, so I think maybe the best thing to now do is to maybe do a little better inventory of what some of the options are, reconvene with this group, and at least talk about those and update folks on other things. I don't know when the last time is we actually did our speed study there, Chief.
It was back in the fall, as Director Dudley had mentioned,
For the fall of
November of 2018.
okay, so it's fairly recent. Okay.
If we wanted to upgrade that stop sign to like one of those nice, pretty LED ones that are really bright, do we have to have permission to do that from the state, or can we just do it?
We can just do it.
I like that answer. With enough money, with the money, right? How much do those signs cost, do you know?
They're about $2,500 a piece.
Oh. So maybe that's something we look at doing.
That would be
help
one of the
make it more
options that we
visible.
could identify.
So it's $2,500 every time you install it. So every time it gets hit, it's $2,500.
Would somebody's
People roll
car
that-
insurance cover that, or?
Yeah, we chase car insurance companies on that, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If
throwing that
if
out
it's
there
reported,
as an
if they don't
option.
run.
Is there a motion from the, or do we,
Don't think there
just,
is.
no, we don't need one? Just have the, okay, so we'll leave it up to engineering to pursue that, and then we'll bring it back again to committee.
Well, we've got 4 good names and valid email addresses now in the neighborhood, so we can keep people informed and they
Okay.
can help us reach out.
Okay.
Okay?
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. The next item, Conant Street speed limit. Chief Roberts, did you want to speak to that item?
I will, to the extent that I've received a complaint from one resident that lives on Conant Street concerned about the speed limit with the volume of vehicles on the section of Conant Street that is Route 25. Basically from Main Street out to the Gorham border.
Okay. Eric, can you tell us what the speed limit is in that section right now?
Oh, no, probably not. I think it's 40.
It's 40.
Oh, it's 40.
Sorry.
Okay.
It is 40.
And so does it reduce past, like, where the residential part of Conant Street? I mean, where is the whole
No.
stretch is 40?
Yeah, once you turn from Main Street or William Clark Drive ends and dumps into that section of Conant Street, it's 40 miles an hour all the way out into Gorham.
Okay. And the suggestion that you would have for us is to reduce it to,
I'm not sure I have her suggestion. I was just bringing the complaint of the citizen forward.
okay. Is that citizen here?
I spoke to him on the phone. I don't
Okay.
know.
All right. Yes, Council Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we, Eric, do you recommend this as a street to be studied, to suggest that the state study this? Or is this gonna be one of those ones that may come back to increase the speed, given the location and, movement of traffic there? Kind of like Westbrook Arterial.
I think you run a risk of 45 miles per hour.
So I think, based on the discussion, I had the discussion with the individual who spoke on the first item, Lincoln Street. I had the discussion about the potential, Eric seems pretty confident it's not gonna be an issue, but in this one, I think Eric's probably correct that this may get rose to 45 miles an hour, given the movement of traffic there. I'm not sure if any of the construction work in the extension of William Clark Drive is gonna go that far. There's not any work that's needs to be done out in that area up to Conant Street, so there won't be any more street tightening in that location. So it may be, this may be an item we let lie where it is.
Mr.
Thank you,
Bryant?
I guess one thing I'd ask is, and I'm going to butcher the name, and I apologize, is Louis Adas here?
Wattis.
What is? Okay. My recommendation is, given the time and everything else, that we not address this item. I'll reach back out to him, try to get some more information on his concerns. I think this is going to be a tough one to address.
And share with them what we've run into.
Exactly. Yep. I'll reach out to him.
Chief Roberts?
Just a general note for the council and for the public that I just today was talking with Captain Lally about investing some of our cruiser fee funds, the money that we get from the outside vendors that use our offices and cruises in construction along the city, to invest in a couple of speed limit radar signs that you can temporarily post them so we can move them around the city. But something that flashes that tells you you're going over the speed limit, or you're going what the speed is, 33 if it's a 35, if it's over 35, flashing, slow down, or something similar to that. Let me look at investing in that technology for a variety of streets that we have complaints on. In addition, knowing that we don't have the city funds, but that is a revenue source that I think is appropriately used for that.
Great, thank you. Anything further? Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
is there a second? A second, all those in favor? We are adjourned.
Good evening, and welcome to a special city council meeting. Madam,
Call.
yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to note for the record that this is a special city council meeting called by Mayor Sampe on Friday, March 15th, 2019. Notice of meeting was sent to city councilors and posted to the city.
Can we please stand? Actually, roll call, please.
Councilor Adams?
Here.
Councilor Chow is absent. Councilor Foley?
Here.
President Reardon?
Here.
Councilor Peoples is also absent. Councilor Riley?
Here.
And Vice President Turcotte's absent as well.
For being present, would you please join me in saluting the flag? Thank you. I don't see any minutes in tonight's packet, and that brings us to the mayor's message. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, President Radin. My first is a presentation, a citizen recognition plaque to Ann Bittner. In recognition of many years of service to the city of Westbrook as administrator of the Westbrook Good Samaritan Fund, your dedication and commitment to serving Westbrook residents who are in need is greatly appreciated. I want to give this to Mrs. Bittner. Okay, next I have a mayoral proclamation in honor of the 90th anniversary of Westbrook Lions Club. Okay. Whereas the International Association of Lions Clubs was founded in 1917 by Chicago area businessman Melvin Jones, and whereas Lions Club International is the world's largest service club organization with more than 1.4 million members in approximately 46,000 clubs in more than 200 countries and geographical areas around the world. And whereas in 1925, Helen Keller challenged Lions to become Knights of the Blind in a crusade against darkness, and whereas the Westbrook Lions Club, founded in January 11th, 1929, has provided much-needed services and fundraising efforts for the Westbrook community for 90 years. And whereas activities of the Westbrook Lions Club include providing funds towards glasses, eye surgeries, and hearing aids to individuals with limited financial means, collecting and recycling donated sunglasses, eyeglasses, and hearing aids, and cell phones to be sent for use all over the world, offering an annual scholarship to a Westbrook High School student, donating to the Westbrook Little League since 1952, running bi-monthly Beano games, and providing a holiday party for residents of Longfellow Place, fundraising to assist Camp Sunshine and the Good Shepherd Food Bank. And now, therefore, I, Mike Stanvey, Mayor of the City of Westbrook, do hereby deem it an honor and pleasure to extend this certificate of recognition to the Westbrook Lions Club in celebration of 90 productive years of service to our community. With sincere congratulations and best wishes. Next, we have a presentation on police administration by Chief Roberts, or Captain Goldberg.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Sanfey and Administrator Bryant. My name is Steve Goldberg. I'm a captain with the police department. My presentation is on two parts. The first part is on my role as the administrative division captain for the department, and the second part is focused on emergency preparedness and planning that the police department is doing. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to ask them. So as you might know, the police department is divided into two parts. We have the operations division and the administrative division. Captain Lally is in charge of the operations division, and he presented a couple weeks ago, I believe, to the council. And I'm in charge of the administrative division. Third in command of the police department, and I'm responsible for supervising the division and its activities. And along with that, I am sharing on-call responsibilities with Chief Roberts and Captain Lally. So there's always one of the three of us on call, local and available at any time, 24/7, 365. So we can respond to any major incident and take command and oversee the department directly. So the division that I supervise includes the Criminal Investigations Division, which comprises a detective sergeant, 3 detectives, 2 drug agents, an evidence technician, and the domestic violence and juvenile investigator. Along with the Criminal Investigations Division, there's a court sergeant, the 2 school resource officers, and an FBI task force officer. And I also supervise 2 civilians, our records administrator, and the recovery liaison. And with the recovery liaison comes supervision of the Westbrook Recovery Liaison Program. So I have a number of duties along with overseeing the activities of my division and those that I supervise. My favorite one of all is payroll. That's my Monday morning chore, reviewing and approving all pay sheets for the department. I'll touch more on event planning in the second part. I assist the planning department with reviews of different plans for developments that are coming into the city. I oversee the department's employee recognition program. I assist with policy writing. I oversee the background investigation portion for hiring of new police department hires. So along with assigning a background investigator for that employee and making sure that the investigation is done correctly, I work on scheduling their polygraph, scheduling their psychological exam, scheduling the medical exam, and then putting them through a physical fitness test prior to them going to the police academy. I handle some internal affairs investigations and personnel matters. I handle grant writing for the department, and along with grant writing is management and reporting of grants. If any of you have ever done grants, you know that the hardest part is actually the reporting. They keep adding more and more requirements to it. We currently have 7 active grants through the police department for a total of $310,781. That's a combination of federal and state money, and these help fund personnel, equipment, programs, and enforcement details. I'm the department's Facebook and webpage administrator, and our Facebook page has over 20,000 fans currently. I collaborate with the school department on emergency planning, which I'll touch on in a little bit, and also work on emergency planning and preparedness with other stakeholders. I handle background checks for business license requests that come through the city and oversee compliance with the FOA requests that come to the police department. Before I move on to the next part, are there any questions about kind of my duties and role as the administrative division captain? All right. So the next part is talking about the emergency planning and preparedness that our department does. We're helping take a lead in improving the city's emergency plans and preparedness, along with those of our public and private stakeholders. We're testing our response and refining our plans. We identify needs and resources to respond to any emergency. And we're working with stakeholders, both public and private, throughout the community to improve the safety of their facilities and to improve their ability to respond to emergencies. Part of this involves organizing exercises to test and drill the emergency response protocols of our department and other departments. We assist public and private entities with training, advice, and assessments. So one of the things we do is collaborate with the school department. To date, we've done 2 major exercises with the school department. The first was a tabletop exercise about 2 years ago. We had nearly 80 people attend, and we were discussing and kind of role-playing, almost responding to emergency at a school. The second was a functional exercise where we take a certain piece of an emergency and we test our ability to respond to it. And that was done a year ago at the Canal Elementary School, and that focused on evacuating and transporting students from a school. And a third exercise is currently being planned for next fall. Along with this, we do 3 lockdown drills and 2 lockout drills throughout the year at all our schools. Both of these are labor intensive and do require quite a bit of planning, but they're worthwhile. Just in a year, we've seen a huge improvement in the ability of our students and staff to respond to these drills and to better respond to any emergencies. And it's not just training for the schools, it's also training for the first responders. We're learning how to respond to an emergency in the school, and we're familiarizing ourselves with the school's layout and emergency procedures. We're part of the district emergency team, myself and another school resource officer. We had applied for and received a $153,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, as you're all aware, because I've been sending plenty of memos your way. And this is improving the security of the schools. The money is going towards new radios, surveillance cameras, consulting fees, mapping, and improved numberings of our classrooms. We're providing training to school staff. Just last Friday, myself and Lieutenant Joe Carroll from the fire department were helping to train the bus drivers on some emergency protocols and procedures. We've had training with different staff throughout the school district, and we'll continue doing that. We do safety and security walks of our schools. We meet with the principals, their assistant principals, and we walk through the school on a normal school day, looking to see anything that we can find to help them improve the safety of the school. And all this has resulted in a safer school system. And what a safer school system means is we have students and staff that have a better feeling of security while in school, and this is improving everybody's ability to learn and teach. And we're also going to begin working with the Westbrook Community Center along these same lines. We've met with Greg Post and his staff already. We've provided some initial recommendations, and they've already actually implemented some of them. Unfortunately, the fire has kind of slowed us down a little bit, but once they get fully up and running, we're going to get back at it. And we'll be providing training to all the staff and tenants of the building on how they can respond to an emergency. We're working with Spring Harbor Hospital as well. We worked with them to hold a tabletop exercise back in November that focused on the response to an active shooter at the hospital. The exercise was a great success. A number of action items were developed out of that the hospital was able to implement to improve the safety of the building and their patients. And police, fire, and hospital staff now have a better working relationship and will be able to respond to any emergency more prepared. We also help the private sector out as well. A number of businesses in the community have reached out to us seeking our assistance with emergency planning, site assessments, and training. We respond by conducting a walkthrough of their facilities. We provide different recommendations, review their policies and make recommendations to that, and provide some training to the different employees. So a quick case study on what it takes to pull off just one exercise. So as you may be aware, this past fall in October, the city held a tabletop exercise around our response to a major flooding incident in the city. There were 13 members on the planning committee, 5 of which were from the police department. Planning for this started in April of 2018, and this required multiple meetings a month, with each meeting taking approximately 2 hours. Many stakeholders had to be brought to the table: the fire department, city hall staff, the emergency communications department, public services, Cumberland County EMA, SAPI, and the American Red Cross. And approximately 80 people attended the tabletop. The scenario itself had to be planned from scratch, so this required a scenario subcommittee. So that subcommittee had to meet more than just that once or twice that the whole committee was meeting. And then we realized that the city's emergency operations plan was badly outdated, so that required a new subcommittee, and they had to additionally meet. And then we had to have a committee to handle the logistics of the events: supplies, location, food, staffing, etc. The planning committee was able to obtain flood maps, learn of current plans, and identify and invite participants, and they had to get trained on facilitating a tabletop exercise, since for most of us this was our first time actually running one. And the work does not stop there. Actually, this is the easy part, was the planning. Now comes the hard part, is implementing all the action items that we found need to be addressed, and that's something that we are working on currently, and at some point we'll be coming to the City Council to present that and seek some guidance moving forward. Some time commitment, just what it takes in to do in one exercise. For the flooding tabletop, approximately 150 hours of planning by the police department employees that were involved with this, and then a combined 66 hours for those who were actually attending the event for the police department. For the school department exercises, one exercise on the police department's part takes about 100 hours of planning. That doesn't include what the school department, the fire department, and all our other stakeholders put into it, and about 48 hours for police officers that are attending the actual exercise. For the community center, we're anticipating approximately 50 hours of work will go into working with them. The ongoing school department emergency preparedness, the lockdown drills that we do take about 5 hours each day with multiple officers working the drills. I mean, this building alone, when we do it in the Volk Center, we have about 10 officers going through. And every week we're doing work with the school department. Some weeks it's as little as 2 hours, some weeks as much as 15 hours. In the private sector request, some businesses require just a few hours. They just need somebody to come in, go over their plans, and they're good, while others are more work, sometimes up to 30 hours spread over a period of time. So also falling under this category is event planning. And it falls in this category because it's our duty and responsibility to protect the mass gatherings of people at events in our city. These require many hours of plannings and meetings, and then we develop an operations plan for every single event that requires police staffing. So the days of us just kind of willy-nilly throwing officers down there and saying, have a good time, make sure everything's safe, is long over. We now have a purpose and a plan behind everything we do. Some of the major events in the city, also we put a police administrator on scene to be the incident commander for the police department to oversee things. These include Westbrook Together Days, the different parades we do, the Westbrook Strong 5K, the Halloween on Main Street, and the soon-to-be concerts at Rock Rose Amphitheater. And our goal through all these events is to safeguard all of them so that those that are attending can be safe and have an enjoyable time. Some future needs kind of within this field. The need for emergency planning preparedness is only going to grow in the future, especially with Westbrook being such a growing city as it is. Our private sector is growing rapidly, and they are recognizing, to their credit, that they need to do more to safeguard their employees. Our public government is becoming more aware of their own security needs, and they are proactively reaching out to us to help them address them. The pending amphitheater at Rock Row is going to have about 30 events a year, with some of them, if they're sold out, having 8,000 plus people attending. Each event will require extensive planning and staffing. Along with this, the future Rock Road plans call for more events not even tied to the amphitheater, so those are going to be even more events that the police department will be looking to safeguard. And current staffing administrative requirements do make it difficult to meet all of these demands and needs. Why is all of this important? Well, helping stakeholders secure their building significantly increases the safety of the building and its occupants. Target hardening can deter and even prevent acts from occurring, and everyone feels safer. And when everyone feels safer, they're going to be more productive, whether it's in school or at business. And if we don't plan or train for an emergency, we will not be prepared to respond. The time to prepare for an emergency is not when we're actually responding to it. At that point, it's too late. Any emergency response in our city will involve more than the police and fire departments as well. And part of this process has been bringing in the different stakeholders to get them better prepared and know what their role might be in any emergency. And we're also identifying areas that need to be improved upon and resources that are needed. And most importantly, our community expects this out of us. They expect us to have the knowledge and ability to respond to an emergency and to protect them. If we don't, simply put, we have failed them. This work that we are doing will save lives and make Westbrook a safer community for all. And that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions from anyone about it.
Council? Yes, Councilor Adams.
Thank you for your presentation.
Welcome.
I do have a question when it comes down to providing emergency planning for private businesses. So is this all the emergency planning for like community center, all these different departments in private sector, are they handled by on-duty staff or is it somebody in addition, like yourself?
Right now, it's been handled by on-duty staff, and it's one of those things, if we can, especially with private sector, if it's going to work within our schedules, and they're subject to, if we have other priorities, sometimes we have to cancel because of things going on in the community. At this point, it hasn't become too burdensome that we have to look at other options, but as of now, yeah, it's been handled by on-duty.
And how do the business owners know that that's something that you offer?
We haven't advertised it till, I guess, now, but we have had some proactively have reached out to the police department. It's kind of one of those hot topic things in the business community is we need to make everybody safer. Their employees are demanding it. If you just look at the news, you can see what people are looking, so they figure, well, what better place to start than the police department, so.
And I'm assuming we don't charge them?
Correct.
Okay. That might be something if we might have to look at down the road, I don't know. If they're requesting a lot of it and it's up to 30 hours for one company, I don't know. We don't have the staff to handle that. I have to look at that in the future. But thank you very much. Great presentation.
Councilor
Thanks for all
Folk.
you do.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Kemp Goldberg. Tremendous presentation. Just in follow-up to charging for services, as far as like the upcoming Rock Row, I know a lot of that stuff is still sorted out, and we're still working on a mass gathering ordinance. Will there, where you indicated there would be a member of the command staff there as an incident commander, will they be paying for that in addition to officers? That I know we don't even have enough officers to staff an event like that. They'll be paying for the incident commander's time as well.
Yep, any staff that is dedicated solely to the amphitheater, which will include the incident commander, that will include traffic control officers and security officers, that will be paid 100% by the amphitheater folks.
Okay, so will they be reimbursing part of, for instance, your salary if you're there, or is that like overtime?
It will be overtime for whoever the incident commander is. So I'll still, if it's me, let's say for this first concert, I'll still be working my 40 hours that week, and then this will be in addition to the 40.
Okay, understood. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that after our first year of testing that process out and seeing what we can do to improve that and see what kind of hiccups we run into.
Yeah, we've been hard at work on our operations plan. I've been devoting a lot of time towards making it. I know the fire department's been working on their end. We're having an internal meeting in a couple weeks to plan that. We're meeting with their security folks, so it's something that we are doing a lot of work at. We'll be training as a department in May on it because we've never done anything like this. I mean, Westbrook Together Days was our big thing, and this is going to kind of blow that out of the water. So some new training, some tactics, techniques that we're going to have to fine-tune before this, but so we're hard at work doing that.
Well, thank you for all the work that you do, and if you need any assistance, I'm sure our old friend Bill Baker will make himself available to you.
Already been in touch with him.
Yeah, he reached out to me to let us know he was available. So
yeah, he's been great. He's sent us a lot of their operations plan from down there, some techniques, and we're just trying to schedule time to do like a phone conference with each other to go over some stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the council? Anything from the public? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain Goldberg. Great presentation. Next, we have a update on the marketing and review of the ice disc. Tina Riddell.
Don't take it personally, Tina.
The fewer the better. Okay. Tina Riedel, Marketing and Communications Manager. I cued that, I made that up. First, I'm going to give a quick marketing update. I actually have like a two-part presentation, and then I have an ice disc overview, and I will take questions after both of them at the end. Okay, so we've been doing a lot of marketing over the past few years. This year, we were lucky to expand our team. We now have Barry Dodd doing the community TV, which has been a huge help. And with Daniel Stevenson, it's kind of formed a nice little economic development and marketing team. Some of our goals are to drive awareness about Westbrook, positively shift perceptions, keep Westbrook top of mind, attract business and investment, promote Westbrook's amenities, increase frequency of content, and having Barry certainly help that, create more social engagement on our social media channels, and to communicate clearly and professionally with our marketing collateral. Last year, the city made an investment in mobile equipment, and that has been a wonderful investment. We created our commercials 100% in-house, from writing the script to the actor to editing, and it's just been a great process because it leaves us a lot of flexibility in our creations. The drone is a second item. It's for the small cost. It has paid off tremendously. Last year at this time, I didn't have a license. I didn't know how to fly it. And so we've only been using it a short period of time, and we've gotten quite a bit of use out of that. And a lot of response to people like seeing the aerial perspective of Westbrook. So as part of our goal to continuously engage people, we are continuously creating content. And every day we're posting on social media or our website or on TV or the radio. A lot of the content is business focused, working with economic development. So we've covered, and mostly Barry, grand openings, ribbon cuttings, events and presentations like the sculpture installation and things like that. Community happenings. We got out there for some concerts. We've been covering the trails. The fish migration was actually one of the first things we shot with the new footage, with the new equipment. Barry on a monthly basis covers the Historical Society meetings, which are very interesting topics. We post those on the website as well. The holiday lights, those are just some of the examples. And then we provide departmental support. So you'll see some videos on public safety, the community center. We covered, we did a camp video, helped out with that. The library opening of the reading room. Public services, I think we shot some overviews of the parking situation, and we're working on a video with the school right now. So I don't know, hopefully you've been seeing the ads out there. I don't know if you want to see them again, but I'm going to play them because they're only 30 seconds, and just for people who may not have cable or have not seen them yet. So if you haven't seen it 2,000 times, this will give me a chance to test out the speaker too.
Things are happening in Westbrook. Through significant public and private sector investment, Westbrook is transforming. With beautiful walking trails, restaurants, and an increasing draw for nightlife and cultural activities, Westbrook has become an attractive place to be. Our business community is also thriving, with world-class businesses, small businesses, and entrepreneurs calling Westbrook home. We understand the speed of business and will work with you to help mitigate risk so your business can flourish. If you haven't been to Westbrook in a while, take another look and see how Westbrook works for you.
So that was our first commercial, and that was in warmer weather. Let me get back to the other one. And in much, much colder weather, in fact, we chose the coldest day of the year, we shot this one. Like, it was really cold.
Hey, things are happening in Westbrook all year long, and there are lots of reasons to get outside this winter. Although we are a city, you can go cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, snowmobiling, and much more right here. With miles of accessible trails, the beautiful Presumpscot River, and a walkable downtown, Westbrook offers a multitude of recreational activities, and you never know what you might see. If you haven't been to Westbrook in a while, take another look and see how Westbrook works for you.
Okay. Okay, so those were our two main TV ads. They've been running on Spectrum Cable since late November. And we switched over to the winter ad for a short period of time, and now we're switching back to the original one for the warmer weather. So in other advertisement, paid advertisement, we've been doing a lot of print ads in Maine Biz and targeting businesses and owners and professionals. So we have quite a wide variety of places where we've been marketing. We're really trying to be everywhere, and it takes a lot to put it in all these places, so we're constantly working and measuring and seeing what's working well and what's not. And some of it's experimental and some of it's new, so we're finding our way, but we're definitely getting a lot of response from it. So our marketing mix, wherever you're watching, our content will hopefully find you. It's pretty targeted with all the digital avenues that we can use. We can literally target where you're from, where you work, you know, what your interests are. So that's helpful. So our main ones is the TV. That's our biggest investment for advertising, and that's on Spectrum Cable. We did a short run on WCSH in December, and that got a lot of views. We used WGME again for OTT. That's over the top, so that's beyond cable. That's if you're using Hulu or Roku or any of those new streaming systems. So basically, if you're a cord cutter and you got rid of cable, we're going to follow you to the next place where you're watching. And then on community TV, we run all of our videos. Radio, Dan did a 3-part series on Positively Maine on WGAN, and then I think ended up getting a bonus interview or piece. So we take those and they produce them, but we end up sharing those as well. So it basically gives us that content to reshare. Web and social media, constantly working that through the website. We place some Google ads. So that put it on YouTube, those pre-roll videos on YouTube, and some display ads on certain pages, mostly business focus. Facebook, we do a lot of organic reach, but we've also done paid reach too, so sponsored, and it's a really low cost for the amount of people you end up reaching. Instagram and Twitter, and then we also have our YouTube and Vimeo channels, which are we've populated with all of our content, or all of our videos. Print media, I already mentioned, Maine Biz mainly, and then we do some in-house flyers to promote things like the parking and try to get that type of information out. And then promotional materials, we've started investing in that with trying to get that W out there with mugs and pens and sweatshirts and hats and things like that. And they've become very popular. People are asking for them and they want them. So that helps build our brand and get the logo out there and make it recognizable. And Build Maine, these are conferences. We will have a booth at Build Maine in June, so with the big booth that we got last year. So now I'm going to get a little nerdier, I guess, and talk about some of the metrics. With Spectrum, I don't know if you can see the logos, but these are some of the networks that our ad has been on. A lot of news and sports because that's the business target, but we've kind of switched it with the winter ad to more of a family-oriented target. This might be tough to see. I didn't know if the interactive view would work here at the school, so I just did screenshots. But basically, that's Maine up there where all the green spots are. That's where our ad has been showing on Spectrum Cable. To date, it's run 2,093 times. The top networks, again, are sports and news. And then here's some metrics for the over-the-top. So this was a very small investment, in my opinion, and it was a trial because it's kind of a new way people are watching TV. And we ran for maybe 4 weeks. And in that time, we had 47,121 impressions, which are views. And the view completion rate is 97.9%. So they're pretty much a captive audience because it's pretty difficult to click away and then get back to the show they were watching. So they have to watch it. So it actually, proved to me that it's a good way for us to advertise. And that's also very targeted. And these are some of the networks it ran on the streaming. So Sling, Discovery Communications, Fox, HGTV, ESPN, CBS, MTV. And then I just did a sampling of social media metrics. There are so many metrics to go through that I just picked a few to go through. So this is from this past quarter. We had a big blip there in January for some reason. But no, that was the ice disc. And so we reached over 200,000 people then. And this is through Facebook, by the way. And then you can see the darker orange, which is more over here. That's the paid, but the lighter is organic, so no cost. Video is our #1 way to engage people on Facebook alone, and these are just the videos that I uploaded to Facebook, not linked to other, like our Vimeo channel. Our average reach is 15,428 people, and the average engagement was 2,434 people. So that was for the first quarter. And then just a few sampling of metrics. The number of people who had any content from our page or about our page on their screen, including posts, check-in ads, social information. In the first quarter was 778,152. And the daily engagement, so this is a total for the past 3 months, 70,951 people have clicked on or clicked into our content. Here's just a quick screenshot of YouTube. Again, there's the blip from the ice disc, which has been very helpful. But the watch time over the past few months, I guess, since January, 51,474 minutes of our content has been watched on YouTube. And here's Vimeo. We had 315,000 plays, 44,000 finishes. Most people are watching on their mobile device, and then next is the desktop, and then tablets, and then TV apps, watching Vimeo through those devices. So this is also from Vimeo. This just shows you where people were watching. United States #1, France, Ireland, Canada, Russia. But, okay, so I'm done being a nerd, maybe. The real measurement of success is people coming to Westbrook, people bringing their businesses here, people moving here, and we've heard from a few people that said they're doing that after seeing the ad. So I don't have quotes from them, but I've heard from staff that they've heard those. And then here's just some sample Facebook posts of people with positive reactions. And having done the social media for a few years, I can see the tone and the sentiment changing to a more positive one. So I'll just read a couple. And these were, the ones in the middle were posted underneath one of our ads. So only been a resident of Westbrook for 4 years, but would live nowhere else now. I really love the city. I really do love being in Westbrook. Westbrook is an easy place to live. Moved here recently after a whole life in Portland. I like it. And this is awesome. I love living in this city. So that's the real, actual metric to me that something's changing. Okay, I'm going to move on to part 2. This is my voice. So you might remember this giant ice disc a few months ago. I don't know. Have you heard enough about it? Sorry it took me so long to get here and kind of cover this, but here we go. So just wanted to give you an overview of some of the coverage that once I got a chance to start digging, it was pretty impressive, and I still can't even believe all the reach that we got. So we had a lot of major news organizations cover Westbrook and the ice disc. If you look at the screen, you see National Geographic, the Washington Post, Time, New York Times, BBC, CNN, and here's some other foreign publications. Looks like Russia, France, Japan, the Irish Times, The Guardian is Australia, Daily Mail is UK. It was trending on MSN. We had a lot of memes created. We got Wessie going after a duck. There was a lot of talk about aliens creating it. Some Patriots memes, of course, over the Super Bowl. Wheel of Fortune and pizza, why not? They're round. So some local visitors also getting a peek at the ice disc. And then somebody created shirts. We had a nice report from the businesses that it had positive impact on them. And then you had people sharing that online. So this person discovered Black Dinah Chocolatiers and shared that information with people. I think people were pleasantly surprised that once they got behind those stores and walked by the river and saw what was actually there, and also seeing some of the new restaurants and stuff. Brown University, so I got hundreds of emails. Brown University stuck out to me, and I was like, I got to get back to that one. I want to make sure that happens. And I reached out to them, and they wanted to study the ice disc. So he's like, is there a way to put a webcam there? And I had wanted to do a webcam back in 2014, so I had that guy's information handy, and we were able to get it done thanks to Ethos and Rob Mitchell We were able to get that done basically overnight and installed so they could study it. And that ended up bringing more news and more attention and perpetuating it because people were watching all over. And they really liked watching the time-lapse videos. So here I'm going to play one more video. This is basically a compilation of some of the news clips from television. I want to thank Barry I handed him a bunch of clips and he put it together and told a nice story with it, so he did a great job. It's a 3-minute video, so sit back and enjoy the show.
Riddell was alerted to a giant ice disc spinning in the Presumpscot River. So she went to the waterfront to capture some footage with a drone.
Just grabbed the shot and put it on Instagram and left it.
I've lived probably 52 years of my life in Westbrook. I have not seen anything like this.
I think the ducks and the seagulls are enjoying the natural amusement ride going on in the middle of the river. It's been great.
And that was just the beginning.
Like an hour later, I was getting calls from the Weather Channel.
Spectacular pictures and video of the ice disc going viral, putting Westbrook and this peculiar natural phenomenon on the map.
Check this out. It's an ice disc.
If symmetry in nature is what you're looking for, welcome to Westbrook, Maine.
You don't need to, Robin, go to the Great Pyramids of Giza. We have found our own 8th wonder of the world right here in Maine. Robin, I give you ice. This is the most exciting thing to happen in Westbrook since okay, this is the most exciting thing to ever happen in the town of Westbrook. They are hoping it's going to become a tourist attraction. People are just fascinated. I have the mayor here with me. Mayor Santi, are you all really actually trying to use this to put you guys on the map as a promotional tool here?
Yes, we are.
You are. You think it'll draw people to your tent?
I hope it will. People coming to the center of Westbrook from here and away.
I was just speaking to my sister in England. I said we've made national news, and she said no, you haven't made national, you've made international, and you were just on the BBC.
The rare natural phenomenon taking shape in the US state of Maine is mesmerizing people around the world.
It is called an ice disc, and it has been evolving, then revolving in the river there.
Riddell has heard from reporters all over the world: England, Germany, Russia, Holland, Australia, and Japan, just to name a few.
Westbrook is now famous for this spinning ice disc in the river, which is great.
Did you see, speaking of water, have you seen this ice disc that is forming in Maine? It really is quite remarkable.
It's gorgeous though to see, and when the sun was coming up, it looked beautiful in the pictures.
Here's a great quote. People are loving it. That's a quote.
Looking at it, you might understand why some think it's the far side of the moon. Others joke that, hey, it came from aliens.
I just got back from Westbrook. I went down there with my video camera to try to find out the truth about the giant ice disc.
Oh, I have a theory. I think Westie's behind this. I've heard a lot about aliens making it, but...
Aliens?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very unique. I've never seen one before, but I'm glad to have it here and get the recognition for it.
What I think about it is it's one of nature's gifts. And you know, we don't always pay attention. There's so many of them out there. But this is one for so many people.
So that was fun, the ice disc.
Was there any city council who didn't get in that on time?
Brendan?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Trash the whole video. We're going to
Oh. Hold on. It's going on to the next video. Let me get rid of that.
I don't know. Am I gonna?
Mute that. Okay, let me wrap this up here. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a nerd again. So, once things died down, I was trying to take in where this has been. I didn't really get a chance to look while it was happening. I was more responding to reporters. I was trying to keep up with it because I wanted the city to be able to maintain control of the story. I wanted them to use our video with our logo and, you know, our information, so it didn't get away from us. And so I responded to people all day long, and then internationally all night long. And it was an interesting experience. So I ended up speaking with a friend of mine who works for a major PR firm in New York, and he recommended TrendKite as a platform to analyze some of the data. And I ended up getting a demo from them for a short period of time. So it was just, this covers January 13th through February 7th. It doesn't cover the end of the ice disk, so these numbers are a little short, but they were still pretty impressive. So total mentions, that's how many times Westbrook, Maine ice disk was mentioned online and on TV, and I think that's it, just news mentions. It didn't include print. So that's 7,425 between that time period, January 13th to February 7th. These are some of the more prominent locations that the ice disk was mentioned in news media. So North America, Australia, Taiwan, Vietnam, Greece, UK, Spain. So the aggregate readership of all of these news publications, in online news, it was over 8 billion, 8.1 billion readers read these publications. Blogs, 73.8 million, and television, 123 million, giving a total of 8.3 billion plus readers. That's all Westbrook, Maine ice disk. That's the search term I used for this demo. Some of the highest readership and impact were from the Weather Channel and MSN. I dug in a little deeper on some of these. So for the BBC, you can see that, maybe you can't see it, but the readership for BBC is 59 million. And the ad equivalency, that shows how much it would cost if we bought that press coverage. So just for this article on the BBC, it would have cost $111.2 thousand for that coverage. So it's pretty good. Just a few more examples. The Weather Channel, readership 21.5 million, and the ad equivalency is 40,000. And MSN, 86 million, and the ad equivalency would have been $162,000. So social amplification, Facebook was the number one, where people shared it. Had over 47, I can't even read it from here, 47,000 shares. And that's just the news articles being shared. That's not memes and conversation and stuff like that. 2,594 shares on Twitter. The sentiment overall, this really doesn't tell us much because it's equal. Neutral sentiment and positive and negative kind of way out, but that's just the tonality of the headlines and the content of the ad, or the articles. So basically, if it said pickaxe, the guy with the pickaxe, or the ice disk was dying, that would be in the negative. So it was pretty much positive overall. Some people didn't want to hear anything about it, but very few. So online news, the ad equivalency is $15.2 million. Blogs, 138,000, and television over about 3.9 million. So making a total ad equivalency of the ice disk coverage from January 13th to February 7th of $19.2 million. So it's a pretty good bonus on top of our advertising budget. Pretty good. And that is all. I took that the morning of the Good Morning America shoot.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Greg?
So I also want to add to last summer, through Maine Rec and Park Association, Tina and Barry helped us at the community center put together a Why I Love Summer Camp video as part of their contest. And just within the last 20 minutes, up in Rockland, we won that award. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Couldn't have timed that better.
I wasn't in that video either.
President
We're going to have to track you down.
Gary.
We'll find you.
I just want to state again, I've stated this many times before, but how fortunate we are to have the team that we do in economic development. And we've made huge strides in the past few years, and we have such a talented team, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, this is making noise. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Tina, once again. Thank you to Barry and Dan also. Great program and great work you're doing for the city of Westbrook. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have the 2019-20 municipal budget. I am pleased to present the fiscal year 2019-20 municipal budget to the City Council for your consideration. This budget proposal strikes an appropriate balance between addressing the growing needs of a robust city and our fiscal responsibility to the Westbrook property taxpayers. With that said, I have serious concerns regarding the accompanying, far more aggressive spending plan for the Westbrook School Department. While I have the utmost respect for Superintendent Lancier and the Westbrook School Committee, I do not feel their budget proposal is sustainable for our community. That proposal is currently under review by their Finance Committee, and I strongly encourage them to develop a more balanced financial plan to meet the needs of our education system while being manageable to our property taxpayers. At my direction, the city administrator has worked with the municipal departments to present a plan that is responsive to the changing needs of our community, is fiscally responsible to the city's taxpayers, and is compassionate to the neediest of our seniors, many of whom are struggling to remain in their homes. Responsive, the proposed municipal budget funds 3 needed positions in our police department to better enable them to adequately and safely protect and serve our growing and increasingly diversified community. Fiscally responsible, this budget and the accompanying 2-year capital improvement program properly fund the capital needs of our city, including infrastructure, buildings, and equipment, to a $10 million CIP that utilizes a myriad of available financial resources and continues to lower our annual debt services cost by $351,399 in this year's operating budget. Compassionate. I am pleased to announce that this program includes a proposal to adopt funding for property tax assistance program for seniors, which is modeled after programs in place in neighboring communities and doubles the assistance provided by the Maine Property Tax Fairness Credit Program. I am a senior, and I want to disclose I do not qualify for this program. It's designed for the more needy people, and nobody in my family benefits from it. The municipal budget proposed increased spending of $842,469, 2.9%, which is partially funded through increased revenues of $697,000, or 4.8%, for a net increase in tax needs of $217,426, or 1.4%. Based on current citywide valuations, this would yield a 12-cent increase in the property tax rate. The school budget proposal increases spending of $2,656,880, 6.9%, which is partially funded through increased revenues of $668,295, or 3.7%, for a net increase in the tax needs of $1,988,585, 9.7%. Based on current citywide property valuations, this would yield a $1.06 increase in the property tax rate. The Cumberland County tax bill is $1,469,796, which is up $67,619, or 4.8%. This yields a 3-cent increase in the property tax rate. Cumulatively, these budget proposals would increase the amount of raise to be raised through property taxes of $2,273,630, or 6%. It would call for an estimated $1.21, or a 6% increase in the property tax rate. The school budget is currently before the school's financial committee and will be presented to the full school committee on Wednesday, April 3rd. Following the school committee approval, the school budget will be presented to the City Council on Thursday, April 11th, and will be voted on by the City Council at 2 readings, May 6th and May 13th. Following final council action, the budget will be placed before the voters in referendum on Tuesday, June 11th. The city budget will be reviewed by the City Council's Finance Committee on Saturday, March 30th, Monday, April 8th, and Thursday, April 11th, and will be voted on by the City Council at 2 readings, May 6th and May 13th. Full budget review schedules for both the school and city budgets are available and will be posted on the city and school websites and on CATV bulletin board. You are strongly encouraged to view, attend, and participate in these budget reviews and approval processes. And now Mr. Bryant has a slideshow he wants to present.
I'd like to just quickly go over the numbers that the mayor just reported a little more clearly and concisely here. This looks at the municipal, school, and county components of what we raise from the local property tax and other revenues that we realize in the city. The municipal portion of the budget is proposed at $29,856,000. That's an increase of roughly $842,000 or 2.93%. The school expenditures proposed at $41,283,000, which reflects an increase of 2.65% over the current year, or a growth of 6.88%. The county budget, which is allocated among all communities throughout Cumberland County, calls for a $1,469,796 allocation for the upcoming year. That's up $67,600, or roughly 4.8%. On the revenue side, and when we identify revenues, we're talking about sources of funding that do not include the property tax. A wide range of funding, schools, general purpose aid education is the largest number. The city has such things as municipal revenue sharing, auto excise tax, and a series of fees and charges that generate funding that is used to help cover a portion of the total expenditures for the city and schools and reduces the amount that has to come out of the property tax payers' pockets. The municipal revenues of $13,686,000 is up essentially $625,000, or nearly 4.8%. School revenues of $18,842,000 are up $668,000, or 3.68%. When you take your proposed expenditures, you net out the non-property tax revenues that are going to be applied to those expenditures, you come up with what is considered the net need from taxes, or the amount of dollars that we must raise through property tax allocation throughout the city. The municipal tax needs of $15,900,000 are up $217,000, or 1.39% over the current year. School tax, property tax needs of $22,441,000 are up $1,988,000, or 9.7%. The county tax rate, which is a net number that comes to us, is the $1.4 million, up $67,000, or 4.8%. That totals a cumulative increase in need from taxes based on the budgets that are currently proposed to the City Council and the School Committee of $2,273,630, or just over 6% increase in the property tax needs. When you translate the number into what the tax would happen to the tax rate, the city tax rate, the city's portion of the tax rate, I should say, would be $8.45, which is an increase of 12 cents, or just under 1.4%. The school's portion of the tax rate would be $11.93, an increase of $1.06, or roughly 9.7%. The county's portion, which is 78 cents, is up 3 cents, or almost 3.5%. Again, cumulatively up just over 6% over the current year. Focusing a little bit on specific areas of spending increases or spending reductions that we've achieved or we've been able to accomplish in this proposed budget. On the increase side, health insurance represents $159,000 increase. And while that's a very large number, we actually have been very fortunate in a comparatively low rate of increase in our premiums this year. And yet it still translates to nearly $160,000 in new dollars needed from the municipal budget. The Maine Public Employees Retirement System, which primarily covers public safety personnel, police and fire, also includes some other municipal employees, is up $112,800. The rates have increased in these areas, so it's not just the percentage applied to the total payroll, but the actual rate charged by Maine Public Employees Retirement System has increased over last year. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the county tax is up roughly $67,000. And funding for the Senior Property Tax Assistance Program, which the mayor earlier identified, is estimated at $50,000 on an annual basis. We have achieved some savings, and some very, very noticeable savings in debt service. That is our annual amount that we pay toward the municipal debt. And I want to be very clear, this is the municipal portion of the budget, does not include school expenditures or school debt coverage. The municipal debt service in this year's budget will be down over $350,000 through retirement of past bond issues and a more modest growth in new borrowing. The other category that actually shows a decrease, and while the individual decrease isn't itself significant, the trend that it reflects is. The General Assistance Program about 4 years ago hit a very, very high level. We'd had 2 years of dramatic increases that were driven primarily by immigration issues, dealing with asylum seekers, other folks who were coming to the United States, settling in Maine, and were struggling to get their foothold. Since that time, well, in this year's budget, our general assistance budget is down $17,000, but over the past 4 years, that number has come down $258,299, or more than 30% during that 5-year period. So we did hit a very, very high peak because of factors that were certainly outside of Westbrook's control. Was sort of a national type of issue for a variety of reasons, including some very aggressive administration of our general assistance program here in Westbrook. We've brought that under much better control over the past 4 years. One item that the mayor also mentioned, the fact that we're looking to add personnel in only one area of the municipal budget this year. The police department is looking at 3 additional positions, one which is budgeted to come online on July 1st. 2 others will come online January 1st, basically phasing in these positions to have an easier impact on the budget for the upcoming year. But both salaries and benefits for these 3 positions total $191,000 in the upcoming budget. A couple policy decisions that the council is going to have to make, along with some financial decisions in the budget review. The first, of course, is the introduction of the Senior Property Tax Assistance Program. We found more and more of our neighboring communities have adopted programs. We have tried to learn from their experience. We've modeled our proposal after what many of our neighbors are doing. It basically adds to and complements an existing program at the state level, so it minimizes both the application process for the individual and also the administration costs of the city to operate this program. What it essentially will do will take the amount of money that an eligible senior is receiving from the property tax fairness program by the state and doubles that amount. We match the amount that they are receiving from the state, so that tax relief would double for those eligible applicants. A couple other areas that it's important mentioning to the City Council from a policy decision standpoint. A few years ago, we received a significant transfer of funds from the Maine Public Employee Retirement System. Those funds were invested and were projected to be applied to future pension costs of the city. However, the council, in adopting that program, limited the amount of money we could use annually to the interest rate, the interest earned on that investment. While that's applying that to our ongoing and future pension needs for our citizens, shifts a few of those dollars away from new property tax allocations. It's a very small portion of the total cost. We're going to be asking the city council to revisit the guideline that says we cannot utilize principal and just interest from this fund because it really isn't providing significant relief to our pension costs, particularly given the escalating expenses that we're encountering. The final policy area we are going to discuss with the city council is how we fund an annual and, quite honest, to be perfectly honest, growing deficit in the operation of our pools, our swimming pools. The highest expense, obviously, is their indoor pool. They also fund the outdoor pool through the same funding. In recent years, the general fund has basically covered the deficit. We have other programs in our community services operation that not only cover their own costs, but in some cases actually produce a fund balance at the end of the year. We want to explore the possibility of perhaps looking at all programs under the jurisdiction of the Community Services Department and use that as the source to fund deficits, particularly in the swimming pool, as opposed to going back to the taxpayer in the general fund budget. But those are three policy discussions we're going to have in the course of our budget review process that can have impacts on the proposed budget itself. As the mayor mentioned earlier, both the municipal budget, which is submitted to you this evening by Mayor Sanfee, and the superintendent's budget, which was submitted last week, I believe, to the school committee and is currently under review with their finance committee. City budget reviews following tonight's presentation. We have scheduled 3 finance committee workshops. Saturday, March 30th, is an all-day event scheduled for basically 8:30 a.m. to, we're estimating 2:30 p.m. We'll see how long it goes. Again, on Monday, April 8th, we'll have an evening budget review with the Finance Committee from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And on Thursday, April 11th, we will hopefully be wrapping up the process with a scheduled Finance Committee meeting from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Following that, we do have an initial date on an if necessary basis in case we don't complete in the 3 review processes with the Finance Committee. We are scheduled to bring the budget, both the municipal budget and the school budget, forward for council consideration on Monday, May 6th, and then again on Monday, May 13th. It is a 2-reading item. In the case of the school portion of the budget, that will following that will go to voter referendum, which is scheduled for June 11th. Again, as the mayor stated, we strongly encourage community members to either view or attend or in some way participate in this review process. The more you understand about where the dollars are needed, where the dollars are going, why things are changing, the better decisions get made throughout this process. The only other meeting that I want to highlight, and it's not on this schedule, but I do want to mention it, we do have a joint City Council School Committee budget workshop scheduled for a week from today. That's March 25th, 7:30 a.m. At the school central offices. Thank you.
Councilor Riley?
Yes, so I know we don't typically ask questions, but I just wanted a quick follow-up. For the policy decisions, are the briefing materials on those things in the binder here, or when will those be coming out?
Those will be advanced as we get to those items in the budget.
Okay. I would just ask if we could get those as soon as possible so we could review those before we start the budget review process?
Yes.
That would be great.
Thank you. All set, Mayor?
All set, thank you.
Thank you. Tonight, we don't have any student representatives, so this brings us to our first public comment where anyone can speak for 3 minutes on any subject. Is anyone from the council? Anything from the public? I do just have one item that has kind of shocked this community. On Friday evening, Senior Airman Sean McCoe, he's a graduate of Westbrook High School, was involved in an incident in Arkansas, and he lost his life. This community has recently, and I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, many tragic losses for our young folks, and I would just like to have just a moment of silence for Sean McCoe and his family during this difficult time. Thank you. This brings us to unfinished business. Madam Clerk?
There's no unfinished business. Next is orders of the day for second and final reading. First one being Order 2019-37, authorizing amendment to the land use ordinance regarding business professional office district. And for the record, this item requires public hearing, and this evening, notice of public hearing was published in the American Journal on February 28th.
Thank you. If there's no objections with the council, I'd like to bring all the public hearings together, and we'll discuss those. Public hearing is open. Any discussion on any of the items? Anything from the public? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilor Foley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move for approval of the following orders. Order number 2019-37, authorizing amendment to land use ordinance regarding business professional office district. Order number 2019-38, authorizing amendment to land use ordinance regarding the village review overlay zone. Order number 2019-39, authorizing amendment to the Code of Ordinances regarding the Village Review Overlay Zone Committee. Order number 2019-40, authorizing amendment to Land Use Ordinance regarding artisan food and beverage. Order number 2019-41, authorizing amendment to Land Use Ordinance regarding Veterinary Office and Kennel. Order number 2019-42, authorizing amendment to Land Use Ordinance regarding Gateway Commercial District. Order number 2019-43, authorizing amendment to Land Use Ordinance regarding North Street No Parking Zone. Order number 2019-44, authorizing amendment to Land Use Ordinance regarding signs. Order number 2019-45, authorizing several administrative changes to the Land Use Ordinance. Order number 2019-48, award of bid for County Road Pump Station upgrade. Order number 2019-49, authorizing expenditure for crash reconstruction, mapping software, and training. Order number 2019-50, authorizing purchase of portable radios for the Westbrook School Department. Order number 2019-51, authorizing emergency repairs to public services vehicle. And order number 2019-52, establishing Chapter 40, event permits in the Westbrook Code of Ordinances and amending the master fee and fine schedules.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Chow for orders numbers 2019 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 48, 49, 51, and 52. Does anyone like any of those separated? Councilor Riley.
42 and 52, please.
All right, we will take those. And 52, you said?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll take those separate. And actually, I have a comment on 48. So we'll have 48 out too. And roll call. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Chow?
Yes.
Counselor Foley?
Yes.
President Reardon?
Yes.
Counselor Peoples is absent. Counselor Riley?
Yes.
Vice President Turcotte's also absent.
That is 5 in favor, none opposed. That brings us to order number 2019-42. Councilor Riley.
Thank you. Well, I'll be brief because I made my objections the last time. The one objection, I don't have any objection to 98% of this, but the one objection I have is as to the convention center. I think, again, this is an opportunity for us to hold that one item back and use that as leverage if someone should come to our community to want to site a convention center. As I mentioned before, it's not going to be, if someone wants to site a convention center, they're going to look to specific properties. If we have a property location here in Westbrook that is appropriate for that, they're going to come here regardless of what the zoning looks like. They'll come and approach us and talk to us about it. This is nothing against the planning board, but what this is that we have the ability up here through contract zoning to much more directly respond to concerns raised by our citizens, or to work with businesses to provide benefits to the city that the planning board doesn't have the ability to ask for. So I think that we should be looking down the road and be perhaps more particularly on this one issue, to pull out of this item the convention center, because we can always put it in a more control, in a process that we on the council can control better and respond better to the concerns and needs of our citizens. I won't make a motion to take it out, as I tried last time, unless people tell me that they're excited about that motion. Then I'll be happy to do it again.
Any other discussion? Council Chow.
Yes, thank you. I'm hoping we could tackle that with our event permit fee. A lot of concerns that could be raised would be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? Hearing none, we'll vote on order number 2019-42. Madam Clerk?
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Chow?
Yes.
Counselor Foley?
Yes.
President Reardon?
Yes.
Counselor Peoples is absent. Counselor Riley?
No.
And Vice
Four in
President
favor?
Turcotte is also absent, sorry.
4 in favor, 1 opposed. That brings us to 2019-48, and I would like to just ask the Director of Public Services, if this project is about $1 million.
This is Catherine Kelly's project, so I'll
Oh,
allow her
I'm
to
sorry.
answer the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, you're stuck.
Yes.
Could this have been financed through, if we had impact fees that were brought to this council about a year and a half ago? Would this qualify as a project that we could use funds from the Blue Spruce? And maybe Jerry can answer this, but this body had an opportunity to have impact fees for the city, and I know that there was sewer and schools was involved, and they actually chose not to go forward with these. But would this been a project that would have been funded by? Sure.
This is a replacement of an existing pumping station that is, I think, either the oldest or next to the oldest pumping station in our whole system. So that would not, the replacement would not be eligible for funding under impact fees. To the extent that we are expanding the capacity of this station, some of those costs could arguably be covered by impact fees. We'd have to look at the detail of what it involves. But there's the lion's share of this is replacing the existing system, and that's not an impact fee eligible expenditure. However, it also upgrades and expands capacity of the pump station.
We're actually reshiving the inside, so we're taking out our existing pumps because they're not that old and putting in new to increase their capacity. So I don't know. We're rehashing what we have, so I don't know if that would count.
The answer is a portion of it could have been, I'm quite sure. How much, it would be very difficult right now to determine that. But to the extent that we're creating increased capacity, that would be an eligible expenditure and impact fee.
That's correct. So as we, in the weeks to come, we'll be looking at the budget and seeing that some of our increases and looking for different revenue. Hopefully that the topic of impact fees will come back. I will certainly recommend them to help offset some of these projects that are coming. Once a project has had their permits, they're not qualified for that, but Certainly, I think we need to look at different revenue for the city, and impact fees, in my opinion, will help offset these. But for now, I will be voting on this in the affirmative. Thank you. Any other questions?
Actually, Mr. President?
No? Councilor Riley.
Sure, just to follow up on your point there. I think, I'm glad to hear you raised the question about impact fees. When we took it up the last time, I think the proposal for fees that came before us, the fees themselves, I don't think were supportable because they would have been crippling to businesses, but I definitely supported the idea of impact fees. In fact, I think I tried to send them back for more discussion, but there wasn't support for that. But I would certainly support having a further discussion of impact fees. I would have supported, I did support it at the time, and I certainly would support it now to revisit that idea and bring it forward. So I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Chow?
Yes.
Counselor Foley?
Yes.
President Reardon?
Yes.
Counselor Peoples is absent. Counselor Riley?
Yes.
Vice President Turcotte's also absent.
Brings us to order 2019-52. Councilor Riley?
Thank you. Again, I won't make another motion on this one. Again, the only reason I opposed to this, I absolutely support and understand the application process that has put forward in trying to organize that, and that's been fantastic work. It sounds like it's working very well. I understand the idea behind charging fees, but as I mentioned at the last meeting, I think this causes a lot of problems, or will cause a lot of problems. Principally, what is being waived is the application fee, but you still have the much larger amount, which is the actual costs. It will be interesting to see what happens when the charities are told that in order to host their event, there is going to be a charge for actual cost of services of what we don't know, but it could potentially be a large amount, particularly for those charities. Their response undoubtedly is going to be, geez, if I didn't have to pay that, I could support one more family, one more kid, one more senior. I could buy more books. I could fund more scholarships. I could do all these things if I didn't have to pay this money. So then the determination will either be made to enforce it or not. They will undoubtedly appeal it to us up here on the City Council. We will then be forced with addressing that issue without having any standards in place to know how we respond to each individual request, which is going to put us in one of two positions. Either we simply grant the appeal in every case and deny and say that they don't have to pay the fees so that they can do their good work. And if we're going to do that in every single case, there is no reason to have this fee in the first place. Or if we're not going to do that, then we're going to be trying to make decisions between charities, all of which are doing good work. And I don't have the slightest idea how we're going to differentiate between them other than I'm involved in this charity or I like this charity or what they're supporting. And I think that has a tremendous potential to be very divisive and a gigantic mess. The final point I'll make on this, if you can tell that I'm opposed to it, is that, again, I absolutely understand the idea that there is a cost to this and it's being funded by the taxpayers. But to a certain extent, this is what everyone has asked for. We want activity in our downtown. We want groups hosting events and bringing people to our downtowns. And this, in my view, is a cost of doing business. And if we start imposing these fees, we will probably stop a lot of those activities. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to end up waiving every fee or making decisions between charities that, quite frankly, I don't know how we're going to make them. So, last time I would support removing the fee provision in this. I think that part of it is going to prove to be a very difficult thing to administer.
Thank you, Councilor Riley. Any other questions? Counselor Adams?
I'm just curious, underneath section 407, under the fees and impact on city services, it says the city of Westbrook may choose to cover any expenses for city services required. City of Westbrook being who's the deciding factor? Like, is that the event planning committee?
Well, depending on the cost, the appropriation may require action of the council, depends on what the amount would be. Anything under $3,000 could be decided by the event committee. Anything over that would have to require council approval.
I mean, if I would like to have it a little more clear that it is the event planning committee that is the one deciding, making the decision, or? It just says City of Westbrook, so I just wasn't sure.
Because it's bifurcated.
Yeah.
If it's under $3,000, it can be the event committee.
Okay.
If it's over $3,000, it requires council action.
Okay.
That just defers to that because that is a policy that's in place regarding expenditure authorizations. So we don't repeat it in the ordinance because it's the rules we operate under.
Okay. And then my other question is, and maybe I've already asked this and it's been answered. Currently, we do not make these organizations pay for city services. Is that correct? Are our costs covered at all by these events?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
And one of the concerns, and this was articulated when we had this discussion, we're getting a lot more requests from a lot farther away. And the concern is driven by the fact that we're hearing other communities charge when you have to put police officers on, or you have to staff a rescue for an event, or you have to close a street, and Westbrook doesn't.
Okay.
So that's part of the concern here. And by giving some choices, you put the fee in place, but if there's an event that, whether it's the committee for under 3,000 or the council for over 3,000, feels that there is a strong public policy reason that we want this event to happen here in Westbrook, there's a line in the proposed budget to cover the cost of events. And that's where that funding will come from, and it'll be approved, depending on the amount, by one of those two entities.
Thank you.
Councilor Foley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I shared some of the similar concerns that Councilor Riley had voiced, and I share that I'm concerned that events where we have been covering the fees and things of that nature, as Councilor Riley articulated, our community events that we've sponsored for years and have encouraged people to come to our town and encouraged all kinds of different activities of things happening, that we may all of a sudden start charging. I hope that the committee doesn't all of a sudden start nickel and diming the events that we've been doing for years. Obviously, if there's significant requests that are out of the ordinary and things that we don't normally do, that those will be thought through delicately. But in an effort to try to move this along, based on what Mr. Bryant just indicated, there's organizations from outside of our community attempting to have events and put a burden on our community and a burden on our taxpayers, that we wanted to get these fees implemented. So I'm not sure if there's much to change in this ordinance. As I'm looking at the wording under the section that Councilor Adams referenced, the section 407 fees and impact on city services, it says the applicant shall be responsible for paying the permanent application fees and expenses set forth in the master fee schedule attached hereto as Appendix B. When the applicant is the City of Westbrook, the Westbrook School Department, or a charitable organization based in Westbrook, the application fee shall not be required, and the City of Westbrook may choose to cover any expenses for city services. I'm not sure if we should strike may and put will, given the concern that President Riley has referenced that may be, or if we can just trust in our city staff and processes to ensure that the concerns and why we crafted the language the way that we did helps potentially address this concern. So I'm not sure, I know we gave this first reading at our last council meeting without this discussion taking place, so I'm not sure what, if the administration wants to speak to.
The one thing, just for clarity here, and the language was crafted for a reason, and I need to refer to legal counsel on this. If we were to make a blanket ordinance saying we're going to charge all these fees for non-Westbrook-based organizations, but we're going to waive or pay for all the fees for the Westbrook-based organizations, do we face a challenge from a equal protection perspective?
Well, I mean, you could always face a challenge, and there's always someone's going to challenge something. But I don't think it would be more of an equal protection argument. I think it would be, a sort of more of a geographical, limitation type thing. But I guess I wouldn't see. I haven't done any research recently on this, and I'd be happy to look into it. But I do. I mean, there are certainly local preference ordinances all the time that favor hiring, local contractors and so forth as well. I guess off the top of my head, I wouldn't see a real problem with the way that this is worded. I think perhaps my concern would be more about the fact that there is the option to choose to cover expenses without sort of any standards, in there, or it just seems to be at the discretion of the city.
So, if I can read into that, you're saying that actually shall would be preferred, because then the criteria would be where is the organization based?
Right. Then there's no then it would sort of take the discretion away, and it wouldn't be challenged on the basis that there was an arbitrary and capricious decision based on who the charity is and so forth. And it would be, if it's a local charitable organization, the fee doesn't apply. If it's not, then it does. It would be much.
The way it's structured isn't that the fee doesn't apply. The way it's structured is the city would pay the fee for a Westbrook-based organization. So
yeah, I guess yeah.
The argument here was you can waive a fee, you can't waive an expense.
Right.
Someone's got to pay for it, and we talked about wanting to track that investment. There's nothing wrong with making a decision that for whatever public policy interest, the city should pay this fee, but we're just trying to make it more transparent than it is currently.
And to provide another example, I mean, I think it really wouldn't be much different from how sometimes for activities, local residents may have to pay a different cost than out of town residents, that type of thing. So I think there would be support, for it from other contexts, whether it's going to the swimming pool and having to pay a different fee if you live in Portland as opposed to you live in Westbrook.
The only thing I want to underscore, because I want to make sure you understand what you're giving advice on. We're not saying there'd be an out-of-town fee and an in-town fee. There would be an out-of-town fee and no in-town fee.
Right.
I just want to make sure that, because what you described isn't what we have. What we have is we're going to charge for organizations based out of the city, and we're not going to charge for organizations based in the city. It's not a differential. It's an all, yes or no.
I understand it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that you have your guidance, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant, for facilitating that discussion with our legal counsel. I think based on the expansive discussion that we had at the committee meeting about this and the concern that these events are part of the fabric of our community and should be part of the cost of doing business, though they have never really been tracked. We have a new tracking mechanism in place, so I think that it may be more in our best interest to potentially choose to cover those fees and to try to bring a happy medium to this situation. I'll make a motion to amend the ordinance that shall read at the end, and the city of Westbrook shall cover any expenses for city services required up to $3,000. So if an event comes in that has extensive expenses, then we'll have that discussion here at the council, and the council will choose to have those extensive expenses. So that's my motion, and hopefully that can try to satisfy the concerns by my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
So there was an amendment from Councilor Foley, seconded by Councilor Riley on the amendment and adding the word shall. Is there any?
And setting a $3,000 limit.
Yes.
And accessory services required up to $3,000.
Up to $3,000.
Yep.
Any discussion? Councilor Chow.
Yes, what's the difference between may choose cover any expenses and then shall choose? And there is a
Shall
limit.
cover, it won't say, if you shall, you're not choosing.
So, the way the city of
One is
Westbrook-
optional, one is mandatory.
Oh, so we will cover expenses for any Westbrook, or for any charitable organization based in Westbrook.
City of Westbrook.
Up to $3,000.
Up to $3,000.
But, and the reason why I like may choose is because if the Greater Boston Children's Fund wants to have a race here, and they get a P.O. box at the Westbrook Post Office, that's a Westbrook-based organization.
No, it's not.
Ms. Burns spoke to that concern at our last.
Okay. Okay. Based in Westbrook. Yeah, I would play with that based in Westbrook definition all day long and run a million races here every day. And try to throw it back in our faces if I was trying to do that. And that's why I like the may choose, because we have the option to do whatever we want, and let's choose to cover the expenses of the Westbrook organizations. And by doing the may choose, we cover your scenario. The may choose would cover the Westbrook organizations under 3,000, because that's may. May is everything. We can cover everything. We can cover any event over $1 million if we wanted to. If fund it all, we could, because it's our choice, and we may choose to do that. Versus the shall choose, and we have to do it. And I like to give the committee the option to go wherever they want to go, however they shall please. And if people don't like it, they can appeal back to us. And and I understand Councilor Riley's concern of us seeing every application, and we're flooded with applications, and our committee meetings the council meetings would just be all events. We just have to put more time in, I guess, but or set a standard and say, this is what we're doing. You guys know the drill. You're not taking advantage of us, and we're going to deny it. We've denied every single one so far, and we're probably going to deny you. And that kind of sets the tone for the committee to say, you can try, but they've denied everything. But the may choose, I like, you can cover everything, and it covers all scenarios, and it doesn't give us terms in the language that sets us and holds us there. We can't be bound by our own rules and get caught in our own traps and say, hey, there are Westbrook-based organizations, it's free. I don't like that. I like, we know who, or I believe that the committee knows who the events are and who who the ones we routinely support. And I don't see them straying from that. They are most of the people in those event committees are from Westbrook as well, and so it's not like they're trying to hurt us. We're all on the same team, guys. So I do like the may. I do not like shall, and I don't like, this ordinance is loose on purpose. And I do like the looseness, and we can kind of go our own way, and that's what we need to do. We can't set ourselves in stone and get caught saying, "Oh, shoot, I shouldn't have done that." Maybe we could have worded it better. This way, we're covered. So I will not be supporting the shall. I like the way it's chosen. I like the looseness of this ordinance. I like how the committee can help us decide, and I am fully positive that committee is here to help us. So I do not like shall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
You go ahead. I'm just going to make a point for you both. That's
Okay.
all.
I would like to disclose that I am the president of the Westbrook Strong organization. I do not receive any funds, any type of pay for this. It is an organization that donates 100% of the profits to scholarships at St. Joseph's and this year at the Westbrook High School. So if there's no objections, I will be voting on this, so. Mr. Bryant?
Just want to make a procedural clarification. This is an ordinance amendment. On second reading, an ordinance amendment requires a majority vote of the city council, not just the city councilors present. So in order for this to receive approval, it will need to have 4 affirmative votes.
Not on the motion to amend, but on the motion to approve.
Amendment is, yeah, exactly. For final approval.
So is there any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Was there a second on the amendment?
Yeah, Brendan.
Yep. It is 4 in favor. All those opposed? 1 opposed. Councilor Chow. So that brings us to the,
The ordinance is amended.
brings us to the order that's amended, order number 2019-52. We have a, did we originally have a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Chow?
No.
Counselor Foley?
Yes.
President Reardon?
Yes.
Counselor Peoples is absent. Counselor Riley?
Yes.
And
4 in
Vice
favor,
President
1
Chen.
opposed. There is no new business tonight. That brings us to orders, first and final readings.
First is Order 2019-53, amending the City of Westbrook's unappropriated funds policy.
What is the wish of the council? Councilor Adams?
I move for first and final reading of order number 2019-53, amending the City of Westbrook's unappropriated funds policy, that the Westbrook City Council hereby authorizes an amendment to the City of Westbrook's unappropriated funds policy as outlined on the attached exhibit.
Is there a second? Councilor Chow. So we have, it's been moved and seconded by Councilor Adams and Councilor Chow for first and final reading for orders number 2019-53. Any discussion? Councilor Chow.
Yes, I throw you to the administration. Mr. Bryant, could you explain how this works with various funds and what they could spend? Could they, let's say that we didn't want the library to have guns, and they raised enough money to have guns, and then they, how is that exactly? Does this policy work?
This policy has nothing to do with what you're purchasing.
Okay.
This is a procedure whereby the city receives unappropriated funds from time to time, donations. This policy was initially adopted for just the police department because they were dealing with, on a regular basis, with asset forfeiture funds who were coming to the city in varying increments, as much as $5,000 or $6,000 and as little as a few $100s. Because of the frequency with which we were dealing with these items, we adopted a policy with the police department that basically said that at that time, over $1,500 in either donation or expenditure had to be approved by the city council before it happened. In the case of donations or expenditures under, in the case of the police policy at the time, $1,500, those could happen, would be reported back to the city council on a quarterly basis. It reduced the frequency with what items were coming forward for relatively small amounts. In looking at that, we saw there were other areas, other departments, other operations where we received donations and would have money that had never been appropriated through the budgetary process. And we initially decided, let's just extend the procedure that has worked fairly well in the police department to all departments, provided these are funds that never were appropriated by the city council as part of a budget. Because we already have in place a $3,000 limit on individual expenditures, rather than bring this forward and creating these two different triggers, we're proposing this evening to align that policy with the $3,000 limit for authorization for expenditures that have to come to the city council. They will always come to the city council. If they're smaller than $3,000 under this proposed amendment, they will come back on a quarterly basis in the form of a report. So nothing happens that the council's not aware of. Anything over $3,000 in either accepting a donation or other revenue or authorizing an expenditure that had not been previously authorized or appropriated, would go to council. Over 3,000 would come in a report if it's under $3,000 on a quarterly basis.
So the, like currently, we take the forfeiture fund and the police department buys bullets from that fund.
We have the best, yes.
And the bullets don't come to us, right? They take the money from the fund and they just buy their own bullets and they
No, the department purchases ammunition for the department to use.
Okay, so that's in there.
Employees can go out and buy their own bullets.
No, I'm not
It's
saying
not like
you-
uniforms. They don't buy a pair of slacks and you know, eight shots of buckshot, okay?
Right, yeah, so basically but the bullets don't come back to the council to approve. They just said, we have funds in our forfeiture funds and we're gonna expend them to purchase.
It always has, and it would continue to, because any purchase of that nature will undoubtedly be over $3,000.
I don't know how much bullets cost, I'm sorry about that.
Usually, I think we're looking at $12,000 this year.
Annually, yes. Okay.
Annually, $12,000.
So quarterly, it's what, 3,000, right?
No, we don't buy it quarterly.
We don't buy them quarterly, we
Okay.
buy them annually.
Okay, all right. Well, we could buy them quarterly and get under that purchase, but the question is, so it's only for, I understand accepting grants and donations and stuff like that, but expenditure parts, is the department able to spend whatever they want with that expenditure, with that money they get? Because it mentions expenditure several times in this, and they can buy, and I just want to know what they can expend on. What, can they buy something that's not in their budget, or what is this for?
Yes, these are funds that were not included in their budget. They're in addition to their budget.
Right.
The forfeiture is a good example. It only applies to the police department. It's unplanned, unforeseen funds that came in. We accept them because it's above and beyond what's been approved in the budget, and we also authorize the expenditure because it's above and beyond what's approved in the budget. Rather than bringing back every single expenditure regardless of the size, a donation or an expenditure of $3,000 or more would come back in advance for council approval. Expenditures less than that would be reported to the council on a quarterly basis.
Right, but the expenditures.
And all we're doing here is increasing from 1,500 to 3,000.
Right, but the expenditures are whatever they want, or whatever is in their budget. So if the bullets in their
Does not relate
budget.
to that budget.
Okay, so basically they can buy whatever they want with those funds.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay, so back to the police department buying, the library buying guns, or is there no limit?
There's still an administrative approval.
Okay, so
There's a finance director and there's a city administrator who have to approve things, and we're not gonna let the library buy guns.
Okay, but it is the extreme example. I just want to make sure that I accept the expenditure. The acceptance is fine, but I just want to make sure the expenditure is monitored.
Let me give you an example. One of the areas where this happens is when we're utilizing land and water fee in lieu of funds, the open space funds that are paid through the planning board process. The reason we tried to apply this policy to the Recreation and Conservation Commission was they were doing a neighborhood meeting as part of a master planning process for a park. And they wanted to buy coffee and donuts to invite a neighborhood out for a morning. And they were going to spend $112. And I said, under the old policy, before this policy was in place, I said, every expenditure from this fund, it's in addition to, the council's never appropriated this, they've got to approve it. So literally, they couldn't spend their money that they had in that amount. So that's why we tried to come up with a reasonable policy, and initially started in the police department and now looking at it to extend it to other departments that have similar situations, that doesn't have the city council approving a purchase of $112.
So you'll monitor every expenditure in all these accounts?
The finance director will monitor every expenditure.
Okay.
I will monitor every questionable expenditure.
Okay, all right. That's what
I don't have time to monitor every one.
That's what I need now. And as far as the quarterly reports, it says is it up to you, or does department heads would have to supply us with it?
We're working on the protocol there, but basically, anything has to come to the mayor's office We prepare it on a quarterly basis. We compile it and prepare it on a quarterly basis.
Is it all right to put that out on the heads of departments instead?
They're the ones that are submitting it to us.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
you're not sitting there doing quarterly reports every,
Well, I only do them every quarter.
I want you to do less. So if you could put that.
I do have some staff. Oh, we have some staff.
Okay.
I don't want to, I don't speak in the I sense, okay?
All right, thank you.
Council Foley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to indicate that I appreciate the effort of the administration department heads to minimize the minimal items that come to the city council for approval and authorization, and hope that this item can pass this evening, and I'm confident in the staff and the finance director will ensure that this is handled in an appropriate manner. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think we should take up the issue of the library buying guns.
Any other discussion? Anything from the public? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Chow?
Yes.
Counselor Foley?
Yes.
President Raridan?
Yes.
Counselor Peoples is absent. Counselor Riley?
Yes.
And Vice President Turcotte's also absent.
Five in favor, none opposed. Brings us next order.
Next is Order 2019-54, authorizing comprehensive update to the master fee and master fine schedules and amendments to the Westbrook City Code of Ordinances.
What are the wishes of the council? Council Riley.
Can I move for first and final reading of Order 2019-54? Let me just get back to that. Sorry.
It says 56 on the actual order.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be 56. Well, I don't know.
54?
Should be 54, right?
54.
Should be 54. We'll update that.
Okay. That the Westbrook City Council hereby approves amendments to the City of Westbrook Code of Ordinances, Appendix B, Master Fee Schedule, Appendix C, Master Fine Schedule, and further authorizes the corresponding Code of Ordinance amendments as outlined in the attached exhibits.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Council Riley.
Sure, just a quick question. I was looking back through this. Is there any change, given what we did with the event permit P? Boy, that came out wrong. The event permit fee. Time to call it a night. I couldn't recall if that fee shows up anywhere in this.
Not currently because it wasn't adopted yet.
Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Chow?
Yes.
Counselor Foley?
Yes.
President Raridan?
Yes.
Counselor Peoples is absent. Counselor Riley? Counselor Riley?
Yeah, sorry, Jerry was
Vice
by me.
President Turcotte is also absent.
Five in favor, none opposed.
Next is orders for first of two required readings. Order 2019-55, authorizing contract with the Animal Refuge League of Greater Portland.
What are the wishes of the council? Councilor Adams.
I move for first of second reading of order number 2019-55, approving the fiscal year 2019 animal shelter contract with the Animal Refuge League of Greater Portland, that the Westbrook City Council hereby approves the attached annual agreement between the City of Westbrook and the Animal Refuge League for the care of stray, abandoned, and unwanted animals at an annual cost of $21,867.50 for the period of July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020. Funds available in the budget line stated.
Is there a second? Councilor Riley. Been moved by Councilor Adams, second by Councilor Riley. Any discussions on this? Councilor Chow.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the administration. Typically, don't we get usually a hometown discount or something? Is that something else, or?
That has historically been this, and I know they have a fee increase. I will verify before second reading if this is what's being charged other communities, or if we were at a discounted rate. I don't have the answer right now.
Every year it's
historically, that's what's been the case.
Because, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to share a story. We needed Animal Refuge League services on one Sunday morning. We actually lost a family cat, and those folks up there did a remarkable job comforting my daughter and offering some funeral services. And rather than go Call a Vet on a Sunday morning. That organization up there did a really, really nice job. You can adopt up there, but also due to the circumstances, they did put our family at ease, knowing that those services were available. So very proud to have them in our city, and it's a great building up there also. Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? 5 in favor, none opposed. Brings us to our second public comment, where anyone can speak 3 minutes on any subject. Anything from the council? Council Chow.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting. I don't like to miss many, or I don't like to be late, but I was at the Westbrook Jazz Ensemble. We had the middle school there, the high school there, and man, were they awesome. So if you have a chance to see them, if they ever meet again, or probably next year, go see them. They are amazing, amazing musicians and artists. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilor Foley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to quickly mention, as part of the budget review process, we will hear more about this when the general manager from the Greater Portland Transit District joins us. But Metro is currently undergoing a fare change policy adjustment, and there's been a number of public hearings. There was a public meeting today at the community center from 3 until 7, and hopefully folks were able to attend who were concerned and had questions. There's also on Metro's website, gpmetro.org, there's a number of other public presentation meetings happening in neighboring communities. The next upcoming one's in Gorham, but if you're interested in learning more about that process, but the fare will actually be increasing, though some changes will be made to it to potentially help make it easier for riders to understand and have a better policy with a new automated fare collection system. So that is something that will be coming out in Metro, with Metro over the next year, and just wanted to let those watching at home and community members know that was happening, and to inquire with Metro if you have any questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to our referrals. We have one referral to review the FY 19-20 budget. Councilor Adams. And do we need a second? Second, Councilor Foley. All those in favor of moving this referral? 5 in favor, none opposed. No executive session. A adjournment would be in order.
We do have a Finance Committee meeting following.
Yes, we do. Yep. So we'll
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Foley and Councilor Riley, and we are adjourned.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. I'll call to order a meeting of the Westbrook City Council Finance Committee. We have one item on today's agenda, which is the review of the capital improvement projects. Mr. Bryant submitted to the Finance Committee back a couple of weeks ago the 2018, 2019, and 2019-2020 capital improvement plan. In a notebook. It's also available electronically for those viewing at home. I will now turn it over to Mr. Bryant to introduce the item and allow the committee to discuss it.
Thank you very much, Chairman Foley. I direct you to the large ledger-sized spreadsheet, which tries to capture on one page a very significant capital improvement program. I just want to try to quickly walk you through the format and what the various columns in particular mean, so you can perhaps better understand and appreciate what we're trying to identify here. Clearly, you can see there were a total of 69 items requested from various departments of the city to be considered for capital improvement needs. With a couple small exceptions, these are literally all maintenance items. They're either replacing equipment, they are maintaining infrastructure or buildings. In a couple cases, there are some upgrades, but most of these are simply straight maintenance types of activities that are taking place for our infrastructure, our buildings and grounds, our vehicles and equipment. If we just walk across the first row up here and say the project, and we'll use the paving as the example. This is the citywide paving program, and it's basically a 2-year program because it's a 2-year CIP. So the first column is project is identified as paving. The request made $2 million, $1 million a year for the paving program. The amount that was approved, that is approved in this proposed capital improvement program is $1 million. The source means source of funding. One of the things we try to do is to try to diversify as much as possible how we fund our capital needs, with the primary objective being, wherever possible, to minimize the incurrence of long-term debt. And as we review the city budget further, we will see some of the benefits of reducing your long-term debt and the benefit we have in our operating budget this year. So in the case of the paving program, it is a 15-year bond. As you go down through this list, you'll see that some of these items have multiple funding sources, and what you will see is if you go down to the next item, which is William Clark Drive, that is a split funding between federal highway and a 15-year bond, with 25% being covered by the bond and 75% being covered by federal highway. So the source can be a single source or can be split. The next 6 columns identify 6 general categories of funding, so that you can sort of track through this. How are we paying for these various items within the capital improvement program? In the case of the paving program, there's a single source of funding, and it's 15-year bond. As you go down through the remaining categories in this the top section, which is infrastructure, you can see that item 2, William Clark Drive, again, as I indicated before, is split between federal highway grant for 75% of $1.74 million and 15-year bond, 25%, which is $580,000. Cumberland Mills paving is a series of 50-50 grants. Stroudwater Street paving, again, is a 50-50 matching grant. And the Brown Street culvert, which is number 6, there is no grant funding available for that project. So that is actually 100% funded through the 15-year bond. And in the case of the Saco Street retaining wall, we actually will be pursuing. We have not received yet, but we will be pursuing. Eric?
We have it.
We have received approval for a 50-50 MDOT matching grant for the retaining wall on Saco Street that we discussed with the council a number of months ago. So that sort of gives you a feel for that. As we go down through the body of this, obviously the infrastructure piece was heavily weighted towards grant funding. We wish the whole CIP had that much grant funding to pay for it. But as you go down through the different categories, you'll see the the project, the request, the amount approved, and then the funding source or sources that are identified throughout the balance of this list. One thing I've emphasized a couple of times, I'm just going to repeat it because, number one, I think it's a very positive aspect of putting together a little over $10 million capital improvement program. Literally just shy of $4 million, or 38% of our funding, is through grant sources. We do rely on $3.8 million, or 37%, through a split of 15-year and 10-year bonds. And while we always try to minimize the amount of funds that we bond, which is borrowing, incurring debt, and paying interest, we also try to minimize the term of those bonds. So we're talking relatively small, short-term bonds of primarily 15-year for infrastructure needs and for a major piece of equipment in the fire department, and 10-year bonds for the smaller items that would try to match the life expectancy with the piece of equipment. So a lot of the public works equipment is actually going to be bonded, but only bonded on a 10-year basis. Hopefully that gives you a feel for how this breaks out. Fund balance is actually the total city general fund balance. Each year, the auditors identify $500,000 to be applied toward capital improvement needs. This is a 2-year program, so basically just over $1 million is being used in fund balance to meet these needs. There are probably a handful of pieces of equipment, probably a half dozen items, that are a little too pricey to fund totally within a single year budget, but we don't want to look at something as long as a 10-year bond to fund them. That's why we're doing those through lease purchasing. The examples, as you get down into the vehicles and equipment, the second item, number 29, is the remounting of an ambulance, where we take the existing vehicle, the cab and chassis is beyond its life expectancy, but the box, if you will, the medical box, can go through 2 or 3 sets of cab and chassis, which is the truck portion of the thing. So we've been doing remounts for the last 3 or 2.
This will be the second.
This will be the second?
Yes.
I thought we were ahead of ourselves. Okay. This will be the second remounting that we're doing. But again, it's $130,000, a lot to absorb in a single year. So we'll be doing that through a 5-year lease purchase. There are probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items that you can identify as you go down through here where we are lease purchasing. As you can see, depending on the nature of the purchase, some are 5-year, some are 3-year. The final category, finally column, I should say, is identified as other, only because it's identifying funding sources that are available to utilize for these purposes from a variety of different sources. Things like individual balances and projects that are completed, where you've completed the purchase and you still have a balance of a couple $1,000s. What we use the CIP for is to basically reprogram those funds so we don't have to go out and raise new dollars to meet these capital needs. And all the accounts that those would be coming from are identified under the source of this total chart. As far as the individual projects and individual needs, one thing I did do in the material that I sent out for tonight was include fleet inventories of the police, fire, rescue, and public services department, because a big piece of this capital improvement program is vehicle and equipment replacement, to give you a feel of the size of the fleets that we're maintaining in those 3 departments. We have representatives from most of the departments here that have items identified in this. I think the only other thing I'm going to touch on is under the bottom category, which is economic and community development. These are projects that are in various stages of obtaining grant funding, and basically these categories are almost exclusively going to be reliant upon grants, in some cases donations. There are 5 projects, all of which are in various stages of development and implementation that are identified here. With that, I guess I would open it to questions regarding the funding and the financing, but also as far as the individual projects. We have Department Representatives here to respond to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Is there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Council Chow?
Yes, thank you. The 10-year bond and the 15-year bond, so it sounds like we're getting 2 new bonds, is that correct?
We will issue bonds. Some of them will be 10-year, some of them will be 15-year.
And would it be cheaper to get 1 bond or no? No, okay. Getting the 2 is...
You're getting different terms because it makes more sense to keep the term as short as possible. So if our total bonding between those 2 categories is roughly $3.9 million, a portion of those bonds are sold in increments that don't necessarily relate to the cost of the item you're financing. But a portion of those will be 10-year that they cover the cost of the infrastructure items and the larger equipment items, and 10-year for items that are what I call more the middle-size pieces of equipment, street sweepers, dump trucks, those types of items are 10-year. So it's how you split it up doesn't impact your pricing at all.
Okay. All right. I was wondering if there's a cost to raise a bond and stuff like that. So, okay. And then on the question on the paving project, typically we approve $1 million in paving every year. Is that correct?
We strive to.
Yeah.
I think in the last couple of years maybe we've achieved it. Historically, we were more in the $500,000 range.
Oh, we're okay. I remember.
I can give you the history of the last 10 or 15 years, and you'll see that. I think the last 2 times we've done a CIP, we've actually come up with $1 million, maybe.
Yes.
Those are the first times we actually. And Eric will tell you. I don't have to tell you for him, but basically, if you look at all our streets and all our miles of pavement, we need to be spending. Eric?
$3 million a year.
Now, keep in mind, we also have a number of highway projects that are going to be rebuilding some of our roads. So you can't ignore those dollars. But if you take our entire inventory of roads and you were just maintaining what we had right now, that you should be investing $3 million a year in that. We're not doing that. We're coming as close as we can with the resources we have available.
Okay, because I remember the presentation given by Mr. Dudley, so last year or 2 years ago, how our paving budget is woefully inadequate. I was just wondering what the extra $1 million would do. Will it do much to the roads, or is it like a big shot in the arm? People are like, wow.
It would get you about an extra 6,000 linear feet of Methodist road. About a mile.
About a mile.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And okay, so that's not much. Doesn't seem like, I guess, but it is what it is. It's more than what we've been spending. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council Chow. President Reardon?
Thank you. I just had a question on the replacement of a fire engine, and I know that there's been talk, for the last 2 years regarding a ladder truck. What engine is this one replacing that's in the CIP?
Sure. Thank you, President. We currently have 2 engines that are overdue for replacement. If you look at the fire department, currently we have 15 apparatus. Of those 15, we have 7 that are overdue for replacement, which is why we've worked with City Administrator Bryant to identify 2 pieces that we can replace. So engine 1 and engine 2 are currently overdue. So we're working to identify, of those 2, which one of those we would look to replace. So work with EVT Adams if the council elects to move forward with this particular replacement. So we'd work hand in hand with Deputy Chief Sloan and EVT Adams to identify, again, whether it's engine 1 or engine 2 out of those two that are slated to be replaced.
What is the status of the ladder truck currently now?
The ladder truck is in service and at fire headquarters.
In pretty good shape?
Right now, knock on wood, it's running with no issues.
I just say that only because when they had that community center, I don't think I've ever seen so many ladder trucks in one spot other than down at the dental office. But, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, President Reardon. Councilor Adams.
I just have a question about the PSB assessment. The request was $150,000. I'm just curious, by cutting it down to what your funding, will that still accomplish the same goal?
Absolutely not.
So
We're gonna take it a piece at a time.
Okay.
We're not gonna be in a place to fund the improvements all at once, and so we're gonna, and Eric can give you a little bit of detail on that, but basically, we're looking to do a portion of the total project, rather than doing a comprehensive.
So for that amount that we're funding, what will we be able to accomplish?
It's mostly increase in security. The $150,000 was looking into reconfiguration of the space for both police, fire, and rescue. Looking at potential expansion, patrols out of room. For instance, I think fire department's running short, so we're looking at how to make that work. My $150,000 estimate included the survey, engineering, et cetera, for site plan approvals, for expansion of the property if we needed to kind of go in towards the properties we own on Hawk Street.
And so for the amount that we're funding, you'll be able to just do what, the survey?
No, we'll be doing. There's a need for security improvements in the building. The security system that's there needs some updates, things of that nature. There's some different things we need to change. So that's the portion that we'll be doing.
Okay. I just need to go to that. Hold just a second. 10. Trying to do this all through my electronics here. This isn't okay. Okay, I guess I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Adams. I had a, did you have anything, President Riley? I had a few questions. Under paving, the paving budget, could we potentially get a breakdown of what that budget includes? I guess in addition to what Councilor Chow was referencing, like a breakdown of our annual spending of what we've spent, but what the upcoming budget is for.
Yep.
Like, I know you guys have a plan of what streets you're gonna do and things like that. That would help to have. And if we need $1 million or $2 million or $3 million every year, rather than borrow money for it, why don't we include that in the budget rather than finance it if we need it every single year?
Well, if we want to add $2 million, well, in this case, $3 million, because we have zero in there right now in the operating budget. If we want to do $3 million a year, that's $1.50 on the tax rate.
I'm not making that suggestion. I'm just saying the request for $1 million.
Yeah.
If we need to spend it every year, why would we spend money to finance it?
Because we'd have to increase the operating budget $1 million.
So as Councilor Hara would say, we're taking it from one pocket.
No, we're basically paying for it over time because the improvement will last. How frequently do we pave roads?
Currently, we're on pace for, probably every 30 to 40 years per street.
We're hoping to improve that, but if this is an investment, let's take half of that. Let's say it's going to last 20 years. Should everybody today pay for that, or is that an investment in a public improvement that you can amortize over multiple years? Now, we're only amortizing it over 15 years. So we can do a lot better than what we're doing right now, and still, we're gonna be way beyond the bond term. There is a carrying cost of interest, you're absolutely right. You know, if you wanna tell me doing another $2 million in paving, we'll put it in the budget. I wouldn't recommend it, because I think it would be, I think we'd get a horrible, horrible negative reaction from the taxpayer. It would make it very, very expensive for a lot of people.
So your logic for financing it is because it's a investment that lasts longer than than 20 or 30 years, even though we need that same amount of money every year. So your financial strategy going forward will be that we borrow $1 million or $2 million every single year for the next eternity in order for us to maintain the roads that we have.
What an ideal approach to this would be to, and I'll do as an arbitrary number, say we're going to increase the paving budget in the operating budget, not in the CIP, by $250,000 a year. And in 8 years, we're going to have a budget of $2 million. But that's on top of everything else we need. We're going to add $250,000 to that operating budget every single year to get us to that point. Once we get to that point, we probably never have to touch it again. But to go from 0 to 2 million is, you know, that's too sudden a change that you're passing on to the taxpayer. The smartest way to do it would be $250,000. But again, that goes right to the bottom line of the tax rate.
So then you do feel that if we could build, I'm not saying we add $1 million or $2 million today to the budget, operating budget, but if we add a little bit every single year, we could eventually reduce our borrowing long term.
I don't think a little bit gets us there.
If we do, like you said, the $250, if every year we add $250,000 for the next, it would take 8 years, we would then have a $2 million budget. And we would no longer be paying debt service on that money.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation on that. The next item I had a question on, I saw the field, which field? Hold on, I forget which field it was, but there was an explanation in one of the community services ones, the loss of the East Bridge Street field. I'm not aware of that. Is that if that could be explained?
The policy decision was made that we would. I mean, Greg could probably explain it better than I can, but there were, or maybe Eric can. Basically, there's been a contention over the years as to what the purpose of that East Bridge Street field was. And indeed, the decision was made probably 2 or 3 years ago that we would.
Yeah, it's in the deed.
It's in the deed restriction.
Yeah, that you can't have organized sports on the East Bridge Street athletic facilities. So we had to cease having those activities on that field. Well, those fields, I should say. And as a result, what that does is creates additional pressure on the other fields. I think what you're talking about is probably the irrigation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going through about 35.
Yeah, I know. I saw them all, and
I
noted that.
That's
one.
what that one's tied to. Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's what it is. Is there's a deed restriction when the city was granted the land that you can't have organized athletics.
So like all that, like the backstop and all that's going to be removed.
No, like so you could still have a neighborhood
like organized
pickup
baseball,
game or something, or just your friends get together. I mean, anybody could. I could live in Freeport and do it. But
no longer programmed activities.
Right.
So like when like the soccer teams used to set up there and t-ball, they're prohibited from doing that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Did somebody call us on that, or we just?
Yes.
The neighbor.
Yeah, the neighbor.
Understood. Okay, and then the next question I had, and I skipped, was so under the Station 3 fire, there was some requests for Station 3. Has that has that been brought into the full public safety building assessment for conversation to the effect of, you know, if we need potentially more space, is that something we could achieve at Station 3 rather than expanding the public safety building or something of that nature to better manage it?
If I could.
Yeah, sure.
Just because I put that request in, it's really for just an upgrade to the heating and air conditioning in that facility. As far as space concerned, they're pretty tight up there for what they do for operations out of that facility. There is potential to go up there so for more space, but I can't speak to their operations and how that would work being on that end of the city.
But I understand what that request is. I'm connecting the two with the request for the public safety building evaluation. Like, if potentially some staff or something can be housed up there that would allow more space in the public safety building.
Part of that $150,000 that I originally submitted after meeting with police, dispatch, fire department, rescue. Part of that assessment would be looking at those opportunities and how we could look at.
That's what I was wondering if that was considered.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it would.
So that answers that question. And then the I think that was what so then again to the same question of related to the paving, as far as if every year we need to buy 2 police cruisers, why don't we just buy 2 police cruisers every year rather than finance the 3 police cruisers, or finance them for 3 years?
We chose to go through the lease purchase route as a less painful way to get to that type of ongoing replacement schedule. So we're only doing 3-year leases.
Okay.
So basically, what we do is hopefully build up to a level where we can maintain, if we're replacing 2 vehicles a year on 3-year leases, once we get six cars in that rotation, other than the increase in the cost of the vehicle, you shouldn't see any cost increases beyond that.
Okay.
Because we will do two a year.
And so in this budget, or in this capital improvement plan, was one of these, were the payments budgeted in this coming, was there no payments budgeted in the last budget? Because this is for...
I think we ended a couple of payments last year, a couple leases.
Yes, 2 a year.
Yeah.
Cycle up.
Every year, 2 should be going on and 2 should be coming off.
Okay. So this purchase, this capital improvement plan has the budget of 115 and 120, and the 115 will be added to this budget, and then the next one will be added to next year's budget?
Yes.
Okay. So that I just want to make sure, because I knew this, you didn't do a capital improvement plan last year.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure there wasn't 2, so we weren't financing 4 this year.
No.
I
Oh, no.
want to make sure there
Yeah.
wasn't 2 payments.
Yeah.
Understood. And then so then as a whole, I've already discussed this with Mr. Bryant, but if we could get a breakdown of all the bonds
Yep.
that the city has, the current rate, what the projects were for, the current rates, the current balance, or the original amount, the current balance, what the monthly payments are, just so we can see a phase. I know you put this together before, so you have it somewhere. A breakdown, and then plug in what these bonds would look like. So the proposed bonds,
Yep.
so we could see, and then also similar nature, the fund balance. If we could get like a historical view of fund balance and reflect this project, the capital improvement
Yep.
funding and the fund balance, to see, so we could see what the fund balance will remain after this capital improvement. And then also, I guess just a breakdown of, the lease purchasing in addition. I know you've
Yep.
totaled these amounts, but just so we could see what those are.
Yep.
So those are all the questions that I had. So are you, Mr. Ryan, are you looking for a recommendation to move this to the full city council for adoption? Okay. Is there any final questions or a motion? It's been moved by President Reardon, seconded by Councilor Riley to refer the capital improvement projects to the City Council for consideration, and this is for 2019, the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2019-2020. Is there any final questions or comments from members of the committee? Any questions or comments from members of the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Being no further business before the committee, I did want to quickly mention our finance committee review schedule that's coming up, but also, so Councilor Riley mentioned earlier in the meeting the proposals. Where do you see in our schedule the policy proposals being discussed? Because those weren't discussed in the layout of our schedule, so I just want to make sure we have ample time. The senior.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the whole schedule so I can work from it from here.
Yeah. So the Monday 3/18s today, and then the 3:30, and then 4/8, and then on the schedule that you included in the notebook, it doesn't have the April 11th date.
Doesn't have the back page. Is it just a one? Did it just come through as
No, I know, but they
one-sided?
just-
It's
Yeah, probably
two-sided.
it's missing the second side.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So would you anticipate us discussing those on the 11th? Or?
Well, I would expect that on the 30th, we're going to discuss the pool question when we're doing community services.
Okay.
We will discuss the senior tax credit when we're doing the mayor's office, because that's where it's budgeted.
Okay.
And
then the main PERS thing?
The main PERS thing is when we're doing benefits. I can't find, okay, yeah, HR and benefits, which is also on the 8th.
Okay. So we will discuss those.
Those all relate to the
We will
individual
discuss those
budgets. Yep.
proposals during that time.
Yep.
So being no further business before the committee, we will entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll see the finance, who made the motion?
Us two.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The motion's been made, and we'll see everyone on Saturday, March 30th for a big chunk of budgetary review, and we'd welcome anyone to come participate.
Just a reminder, we've got this out, next Monday, we have a joint meeting with the school committee at 7:30 at central office.
AM.
7:30 a.m. Thank you. And it's basically a joint workshop to discuss the budget.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning? That's unanimous. We are adjourned.